The U.S. Supreme Court may revive a doctrine that would basically destroy all federal agencies. Yep, not making this up. It's called the non-delegation doctrine. It's been around for a long time. It's never actually been law in the United States. The way things work right now is Congress says, okay, we've got a problem. Let's say, acid rain. Well, actually, that's not the best example. We got a problem. People are dying from cancers that are caused by tailpipe exhaust. And, we're Congress. We're not scientists. We don't know what to do about this. We're not engineers. We don't know how to fix this. We just know that the stuff coming out of the tailpipes, all that soot and all the particulate matter and the benzene and all these, it's causing asthma and it's killing people with cancer. And we have to do something about this. So they create an agency, in this case, the Environmental Protection Agency, or they task an agency, an existing agency, with the job of dealing with this problem of the tailpipe emissions causing cancer and asthma. And they say, you guys, hire a bunch of scientists, figure out what's going on, figure out the best solution, hire some engineers, and tell the car companies how they have to change. And by the way, this is how we got catalytic converters and how the smog vanished in Los Angeles. I've mentioned before I'm a pilot, and back in the 70s, I got my pilot's license in 71, I think, or 72. And must have been about 74, because our daughter was 2 years old at the time. Louise and I flew from Lansing, Michigan, out to Los Angeles in this little, Cherokee Aero, Tango 41752. And had, wild adventures along the way. Had a gas line break, had an oil leak. I mean, it was an old airplane. But when we came into Los Angeles, as we're approaching Los Angeles, it was like there was this giant yellow dome over the city that you couldn't really see through. I mean, you could vaguely, but it was, all the way on and that's gone. When you fly into Los Angeles now, you don't see that giant yellow dome. Well, that's because the EPA stepped up and said, catalytic converters are necessary to get all this ozone and all this other crud out of the air. Under the non-delegation doctrine that is going to be before the Supreme Court shortly, and this is based on a lawsuit from the Consumers Research, which is a right-wing group. And but under the non-delegation doctrine, what would have to happen is that Congress itself would hire a bunch of scientists. The House of Representatives would hire a group of scientists to inform them of the problem, and then they would hire engineers to tell them how to solve the problem, and then Democrats and Republicans would have to get together and write legislation that says, okay, you must have a catalytic converter in the cars, you must have a certain cleanliness of the fuels, and particularly the diesel, and here are all the standards and all this stuff, comporting with the best science. Well, that's crazy. I mean, Congress will never do that. Congress doesn't have the resources to do it. It doesn't have the staff to do it. It doesn't have the expertise to do it. And it doesn't have the time to do it. And even if it had all of those things, odds are, political BS would get in the way and things wouldn't get done. Which is exactly the goal of these people funding this lawsuit. Behind this lawsuit, I'm pretty sure you'll probably find fossil fuel billionaires who don't want to be regulated. They want to have, their poison in the air because it makes them money. So this is coming. And this is on top of blowing up the Chevron deference. The Chevron deference said basically that the courts will defer to the judgment of the scientists in these individual agencies, like EPA. Well, the courts don't have to defer to them anymore. They can take down an agency or a rule anytime they want. But this goes beyond that. This basically says the EPA, only Congress can make rules. And it will destroy the administrative state. It would end the CFPB, it would end the EPA, it would end the Labor Department. Basically, every department of government that protects us, that protects you and me from the predation of billionaires and giant corporations gets shut down. And it looks like the right-wingers on the court are very enthusiastic about this. Meanwhile, over at Fox so-called News, you recall 2 days ago, I believe it was, Rupert Murdoch showed up unexpectedly. I mean, maybe expected by Trump, but not by the media. Showed up at the White House for a meeting with Donald Trump, and everybody was scratching their head. Why is Rupert Murdoch here? You know, what does he want from Trump, or what does Trump want from him? Now, Trump had been criticizing Fox News recently. I have a suspicion that that's all gone away, because what Murdoch apparently gave Trump was a TV show for his daughter-in-law. Lara Trump, Eric's wife, is now going to be the host of My View with Lara Trump, which is going to play every Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox so-called News. The network is describing the show as focused on the return of common sense to all corners of American life. This is what Trump is calling common sense is the new catchphrase on the right. It's just you don't want to, have diversity, equity, and inclusion. You don't want to be hiring, the people of color or women or queer people. It's just common sense that you want to go back to apartheid in the United States. It's just common sense that, women should be in the bedroom and the kitchen and not in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, both the National Security Agency and the National Atmospheric, the NASA, the space agency, National Aeronautics and Space Agency, both of them appear to have just gone nuts in the last 48 hours. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Pat Mitchell. It's titled Becoming a Dangerous Woman, Embracing Risk to Change the World. This is from the preface titled The Most Dangerous Woman in the Room. Yes, I'll be there. Eve Ensler was calling with an invitation to what she described as the meeting of movements planned for the first week of January 2017. In the wake of a polarizing presidential election in the United States, Eve had decided it was time for activists to come together to shape strategies that would unify and leverage the collective power of a wide range of social justice organizations. Who else is coming, I asked. I'm not releasing the invitation list, Eve replied, but you'll want to be in the room. Indeed, I did want to be in that room, knowing from past experiences that any meeting or event that Eve organized would be meaningful. So I showed up, as the invitation indicated, at a nondescript building in Stone Ridge, New York, and surrendered my cell phone to the smiling young volunteers at the front door. Best to have all communication devices outside the room, was the explanation, which of course heightened my anticipation about what would transpire within the room. I entered a large room and saw Eve standing at the front with folding chairs in a circle. Mingling about the room were some familiar faces, the meeting's other conveners, Kimberly Crenshaw of the African American Policy Forum, Naomi Klein, award-winning author and activist, independent media entrepreneur and journalist Laura Flanders, and Jane Fonda, actor and activist. We were asked to find our seats, and Eve began. "We are living in dangerous times," was her opening line, and such times call for new levels of activism from all the communities represented in this room. Let's begin by identifying who's in the room. One by one, the introductions began. "I'm one of the founders of the Women's March. I'm the executive director of 350.org. I run Project South." With each introduction, the level of leadership and activists' credentials became more impressive and, for me, more intimidating. I could feel my anxiety building. How was I going to identify myself? I have no title and was no longer running an organization, having left my CEO position at the Paley Center for Media the previous spring. I could say that I was the CEO of Pat Mitchell Media with its grand total of 2 employees, including myself, but that felt wholly inadequate to explain why I belonged in that room. I mentally rehearsed some other options. I could say I was a lifetime advocate for women, true enough if a little vague. I could list some of my previous titles, but why make a point of being the former anything? I was struggling to come up with how to identify myself in the present, an identity that would hopefully give some indication of why Eve had included me in this circle of activists and leaders. Finally, it was my turn. Before I knew it, I heard myself saying, "I'm Pat Mitchell, and I'm a dangerous woman." I'm not sure exactly what prompted this personal declaration of dangerousness, but I could tell from the looks of surprise that I needed to add a bit more context. "At this time in my life, about to turn 75, I continued, I have nothing left to prove, less to lose, and I'm ready to take more risks and to be less politic and polite. As Eve said, these are dangerous times, and dangerous times call for dangerous women." That got a big sisterly yes from Eve and others in the circle, including Jane Fonda, who was sitting across from me and stood up declaring, "Well, I'm older than my friend Pat, so that makes me even more dangerous." Laughter erupted, of course, and I could sense that others were contemplating exactly what becoming more dangerous to meet the challenges of dangerous times would mean for each of us and for the work we had convened to consider. Certainly, Jane Fonda's life of activism is a textbook case for being bold and brave. During our many years of friendship, I've witnessed her willingness to take risks for a good cause, to speak out and show up, even when it meant personal peril or sacrifice. At 81, she is still on the front lines, campaigning for domestic and restaurant workers' rights, standing with the American Indian communities, protesting natural resource exploitation at Standing Rock, and busier as an actor than ever. In her book, Prime Time, Jane advanced the idea that older women have the potential to become the most powerful population on the planet. She's a great example of how we embrace that potential at every age. My personal potential for becoming dangerous is perhaps more directly linked to my friendship with Eve Ensler. From our first conversation in war-torn Sarajevo in 1998, I've been deeply inspired by her courage and her commitment to do whatever is necessary to end violence against women everywhere. Taking risks comes easier to Eve than to many. Writing and performing the Vagina Monologues, making it the centerpiece of a global movement, V-Day, to end gender-based violence, is a transformative approach to activism that I feel privileged to have experienced. Yes, I was an activist and woman's advocate before I met Eve, but through my relationship with her and as a board member of the V-Day movement, I've met activists facing dangers every day to create change in some of the most difficult places on earth to be a woman. But until that day, I had not felt dangerous myself. Declaring myself a dangerous woman still feels a bit, well, dangerous. And
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Friday, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak. It is the end of the week. It's the beginning of the weekend. And the rest of the country is getting the cold that we had here about 4 or 5 days ago. It was like, down in the teens and 20s, and it was really cold here in Portland, unusually cold. And now, well, polar vortex time. I saw a whole report on CNN. Well, let's talk to the meteorologist. He never once mentioned that the polar vortexes are happening now, and they never happened 30, 40 years ago because the ice has melted in the Arctic because of global warming. They just never mention it. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about today. Yes, we are the villains now, and it's about to get a lot worse. Also, Trump is about to seize control of putting in mail by mail in danger. And Gail Valimont is running for Matt Gaetz's old seat down in Florida. She will be with us at the bottom of the hour here in this first hour of the program. In the second hour of our program, remember their lies about Haitians in Springfield eating cats and dogs? Well, now they're deporting them, many to a certain death. Trump has just suspended their temporary protected status. Also, we're going back. The Proud Boys and Oath Keepers plan a presser at the Capitol they stormed. Anything wrong with cop killers returning to the scene of their crime? And a creepy Missouri Republican wants to set up a registry of those at risk of seeking an abortion. It's getting weird out there. In the third hour, can we all be like Chris Klewe? I'll tell you about that. Also, you need to have a bird flu plan if you have cats in your house, or they may well die. And I'll let you know why and how. And so far, it appears that dogs are safe. This is an interesting disease. But to begin, the opening, my op-ed, my daily take over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Yes, We Are the Villains Now, and It's About to Get Worse." I'm responding to a post by Adam Kinzinger, the former Republican congressman, who asked this question no current Republican politician appears to be willing to ask out loud for fear that Musk or Trump or some other right-wing billionaire will use Citizens United to, blow them out of the water politically by dumping millions of dollars into a primary. He says, "As I watch the behavior of our political leaders, the comments of an ever-increasing unhinged Trump, and the growing indifference of many Americans toward our role in the world, I have to ask a painful question. Are we now the bad guys?" It's a hell of a question. Our nation's founders overthrew a king starting in 1776 and paid a huge price for it. Altogether, 17 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were wiped out by the war they declared. When they signed that document, which said we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, that wasn't just rhetoric. It was a statement of fact. The moment that they signed that document, each one of them legally became a traitor and was sentenced to death by the ruler who controlled their lands and their homes. One of the wealthiest of the signers was a guy named Thomas Nelson of Virginia, but the year after signing the Declaration, the British had seized his home. When he and George Washington attacked the British in his hometown, Nelson encouraged Washington to attack his own home with cannons because British General Cornwallis had taken over his home as his headquarters. The house was destroyed, and after the war, Nelson, who had borrowed against his home to help pay for the revolution, was unable to repay the loans and died in poverty at the age of 50, lost everything. The wealthy Philadelphia merchant Robert Morris lost 150 ships at sea in the war, wiping out his small fortune. He died destitute. Signer William Ellery of Rhode Island similarly lost everything, as did Virginia's Carter Braxton and Benjamin Harrison, Pennsylvania's George Clymer, New York's Philip Livingston, Georgia's Lyman Hall, and New Jersey's Francis Hopkinson. The British destroyed New York's Francis Lewis's property and threw his wife into such a hellhole of a jail that she died 2 years later. 3 of South Carolina's 4 signers, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., and Arthur Middleton, were captured by the British and held in a filthy, unheated prison and brutally tortured for a year before George Washington freed them in a prisoner exchange. New Jersey farmer John Hart's wife died shortly after he signed the Declaration, and his 13 children were scattered among sympathetic families to try to hide them from the British and the conservative loyalists. He never saw them again. He died alone, racked with grief just 3 years later. New Jersey State Supreme Court Justice Richard Stockton took his wife and children into hiding after he signed the Declaration, but conservatives loyal to the crown turned him in. He was so badly beaten and starved in the British prison that he died before the war was over. His home was looted, and his wife and children lived the rest of their lives in paupers. Altogether, 9 of the men in that room died. 4 lost all of their children as a direct result of putting their names to the Declaration of Independence. Every single one of them, all 56, had to flee their homes. And after the war, 12 returned to find only rubble. Every one of them, just like, by the way, every soldier in our military right now, were willing to fight and die for the idea of democracy in America, because in 1776, it was just an idea. And now, after 236 years of existence, Donald Trump wants to, bow to Putin, tweets a picture of himself with a crown on, a gold crown. America is on the verge of becoming an entirely different type of nation. We've pretty much always been on the side of democracies. I realize we've had some failures along the way, but by and large, we fought against the fascists in World War II. We defeated them. We created strategic alliances in Asia and Europe. We led the fight to create the United Nations. And now we're joining Russia, this century's dictatorial imperial power. Next Monday is going to be the third anniversary of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. Marco Rubio, a couple of years ago when he was a senator, said, and I quote, "Vladimir Putin is an authoritarian thug who is accountable to no one. I don't think that what Vladimir Putin exhibits is leadership. I think what he exhibits is thuggery, and we should be clear-eyed about that. At the end of the day, Hillary Clinton was part of the single biggest blunder ever when it came to Vladimir Putin, and that was the reset with Russia." End quote. Yeah, blunder, being nice to Putin. Today, Lil Marco is talking about the incredible investment opportunities in Russia. If you're a billionaire, if you're a big American corporation, hey, we're going to open the door. Lindsey Graham, just last year, stood next to Zelensky in Washington, D.C., shaking his hand and saying, quote, "You're the best kind of ally. You fight the Russians so we don't have to." Today, Graham, like every other House and Senate member, Republican, except for Thom Tillis, who had the courage to speak out yesterday afternoon to a largely empty chamber of the Senate. Today, Graham has been cowed into a terrified impotence, unwilling to do anything to stop or block America's new dictator-friendly, democracy-hostile foreign policy. Our military is being purged along hard-right ideological lines, as was the Department of Justice. The FBI is next, although reports suggest that's already started. Virtually every major government agency is under attack by the DOD. The American government is being crippled. And Putin, no doubt, is ecstatic. In fact, that's what we're hearing from Russian media, is that Putin is so happy with what Trump and Musk are doing right now. I mean, even our defense budget is scheduled to be cut with a chainsaw. At the very moment that Russia and China represent the biggest threat they've ever, at least in my lifetime, ever represented to the United States. They shut down children's cancer research, Alzheimer's research, food and drugs for the world's poorest people. They're laying off FAA employees at a time when planes are falling out of the sky. They're gutting the staff that processes your Social Security, tax, and Medicare payments. They're tearing our government apart, apparently with the goal of replacing it with something quite different than America has ever experienced before. An entirely new America, a royal America, an America of, by, and for the morbidly rich. One that resembles the vision that petro-billionaire David Koch laid out in 1980 when he ran for vice president on a platform calling for the end of all federal agencies, essentially, except the Pentagon. And they're doing it as fast as they can, wrecking our country, because they know if they were to do it piecemeal, if they were to do it step by step, we'd stop them. Our media and our free speech rights are under attack. Trump has sued all three major networks. The new FBI director has sued a Substack newsletter writer for millions. Trump even sued a small Iowa newspaper and their pollster. Chuck Schumer and Robert Garcia both spoke out against this, and now one of the U.S. attorneys has written threatening letters to both of them. Schumer went to the floor of the Senate to apologize for having said about the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision, quote, "You've released the whirlwind and you will pay the price." Republicans could stop this. Every soldier in the American military is willing to die for this country. And yet these Republicans aren't even willing to raise their voices. When Rhode Island's Stephen Hopkins signed the Declaration of Independence, he remarked to his friend William Ever Ellery that my hand trembles, but my heart does not. But Virginia's Benjamin Harrison, who weighed nearly 300 pounds, said to Massachusetts' Elbridge Gerry, the guy that we named gerrymanders after, who was a short, thin man, he said, "With me, the hanging will be over in a minute, but you'll be dancing in the air for an hour after I'm gone." Will any Republican in today's House or Senate, the bodies that those men created, will any Republican find even a fraction of the courage of those who founded this nation? The people of America, and frankly, of the world, are holding their breath, waiting for that answer. 17 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Stay tuned.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's your media support group for We the People. We'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Dale in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hey, Dale, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Nice to talk to you. There's so much to be freaked out about, but I thought of a new thing day before yesterday that I haven't heard anybody mention, and it's about those harvest boxes. You familiar with the harvest boxes?
Refresh my memory. It sounds familiar, but...
The government wants to, kick everybody off of SNAP benefits and get surplus crappy food and put them in boxes and give those to people instead of letting people choose what they may wish to eat or need to eat.
Oh, so we're back to what it was like when I was a little kid and we had to go to the cheese store, my parents called it, where we would get surplus cheese and big 25-pound bags of dry macaroni.
Yeah, I'm old enough that I remember that government cheese.
Yep. And powdered milk. I hate powdered milk to this day because that's all we drank for a couple of years.
Yeah.
We were poor.
And yeah, me too. And, when people don't get to choose what they want to eat, it can really mess with your depression.
Oh, and that government cheese and powdered milk were just not good for you. I mean, it's like, it's not good for you. Yeah.
And, the folks with food allergies or, different illnesses, they need a certain diet, etc., too bad for you.
So has somebody specifically proposed this, Dale? I haven't seen this one.
I've seen it for the past few weeks.
From where? From who, what's the source? Who's proposing that we replace food stamps with boxes of surplus food?
I've seen it several times on the Midas people.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
They're pretty good, yeah. I'll have to check their Substack page.
Yeah. But the thought that hit me a couple of days ago, because the government makes money off of food stamps. They get more money back from giving people the food stamps.
How?
I forget exactly.
I know that the credit card companies make money off them because the card, the food stamp, they're now cards, and credit cards, and those cards are actually issued by private corporations. I think Visa, issues them, but there's some private corporation that issues them, and they make a commission on those. They take a small, like 0.1% or something off the top, but I don't see how the government would make money on that.
I don't remember the numbers exactly. There'd been studies done some years ago. Like for every $1 they give in food stamps, they tend to make $2 back, something like that. I don't remember exactly. But what I was thinking was when they kick everybody off of SNAP benefits, that those people will not be using their SNAP benefits to go to the grocery store anymore. And there's like millions of us that will no longer be spending that money.
You're going to see a crisis in the grocery stores.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I get it. Dale, I got to run. Thanks for the call. That was a good one. 21 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. You know, corporate raiders, when they acquire a company, basically strip it down. They take everything of value out of it, put it in their own pockets, leave just a husk of a company. I watched, Bain Capital do this with Clear Channel. In fact, they just ran it into bankruptcy. And they run off with all the cash. Well, that's what Donald Trump is doing to America right now. He's basically behaving like a corporate raider, taking, all the assets of this company and handing as many of them as possible off to billionaires and shutting down programs that benefit average working class people. This is, an all billionaire cabinet or largely billionaire cabinet with a billionaire president, and they're dancing to the tune of the billionaires. It shouldn't surprise us, I suppose, but there's a whole article about it over at my Daily Take entitled Trump's Hostile Takeover of America, the Corporate Raiders' Final Heist, over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
We once stood tall, held the line, fought the wars for what was right, raised our flag against the tide. Now we kneel beneath the night. Whispers in the halls of power, echoes of a shattered vow. Turn the page another hour. Yes, we're the villains now. We torch the bridges, break the pact, trade the truth, no turning back. Silence speaks, the lost will bow. Yes, we're the villains now.
Yeah, Adam Kinzinger was right. So, wild stuff. CPAC is going on in D.C. I stopped going a few years ago. Used to go regularly. I mean, it used to be a rather rational thing. Now it's turned into basically a Nazi fest. And sure enough, Steve Bannon threw out the Nazi salute at CPAC yesterday. And, this is becoming a popular thing now in the American right. And as a result, the Jordan Bardella, who is the leader of France's far-right party, who was supposed to come and speak, says he's not coming. Bannon threw the Nazi salute, and that was enough for the French far right to say no. That's a road too far. That's a bridge too far. Bernie Sanders is doing his tour out in the Midwest, his anti-oligarchy, anti-fascism tour, and every place they book, they end up having to book new and larger venues because so many people are showing up, so many people are signing up to show up. I mean, this is pretty amazing. And finally, Donald Trump is apparently expected to take control of the U.S. Postal Service and fire the Postal Board. This is from the Washington Post. Jacob Bojage. Donald Trump is expected to issue an executive order as soon as this week to fire the members of the Postal Service's governing board and place the agency under the control of Commerce Department Secretary Howard Lutnick. I believe Howard Lutnick is a right-wing billionaire. He's in charge of the Commerce Department. He has openly advocated privatizing the Postal Service. And he's overlooked this transition team that was vetting people to replace Louis DeJoy. Why did they want to replace Louis DeJoy? Because he delivered ballots on time. I'm not making this up. This is crazy. Ahead of the 2020 election, Trump said the Postal Service was incapable of facilitating mail-in voting because the agency couldn't access the emergency funding that he was blocking. But they did it anyway. They delivered 97.9% of ballots within 3 days. And that's why Trump hates DeJoy now. I mean, the Postal Service was founded in 1775. Before we were even a country, its first postmaster was Ben Franklin. In 1970, it became like Amtrak, it became a government federally chartered standalone corporation where the Postal Board of Governors is appointed by the president and approved of by the Senate. And now you've got several members of the Postal Board of Governors saying that they are preparing for this with a lawsuit. They're going to sue Trump if he tries to replace them. DeJoy, of course, has already given his notice. I'm guessing he had advance notice that this was coming. Wild stuff. So April 1st is no joke. Time to elect Gay Valimont. I'll tell you about that, and she will be with us right after the break.
Thom Hartmann program. Call 202-808-9925.
Stick around. This is how we take America back. I'll be right back with you.
Our book today is Jailbreak Out of History by Butch Lee. This is from the first chapter, Jailbreak Out of History, Harriet. Focus on Amazons, about why we deal with real women as myths, girls who never really existed. Yet and again, all are around us, and that we can't bring ourselves to see. Because seeing through white men's eyes is about non-vision elves. So let's deal with a real Amazon. Think about Harriet Tubman. It takes 6 months. In fact, take a year and think. Break it on down. What does it mean to be the most famous new African woman in U.S. history? What does it mean to be stuck in that lie? What's the meaning of being famous while being hidden and disfigured and dissed? Let's jailbreak Harriet Tubman out of white history and place her in Amazon and new African her story, her people's story. Harriet Tubman's life is a live weapon placed in our minds, showing us what it means to be an Amazon, which is why the capitalist patriarchy has forbidden us to touch on it for so long. In this, maybe for the first time, we can see Amazons as a future force in a clash of peoples and nations, not as myths, but as players in the whole difficult course of world politics. We can also appreciate the bittersweet tang of reality as the peeling away of layers of propaganda and disfigurement which have hidden Harriet from us exposes how much we assume and how little we have known. New African women have already pointed out the significant pattern of Harriet's exclusion. Cultural critic Bell Hooks said recently, if we could recover Ida B. Wells and Harriet Tubman to the extent that we've recovered, say, Zora Neale Hurston, I think that's an important contrast because people want to bury that revolutionary black female history. Historian Deborah Gray White connects Harriet's treatment to a larger pattern in the mainstream history of slavery, in which black women, quote, were reduced to insignificance and largely ignored, end quote. In examining the influential historian Stanley Elkins, she points out, quote, that Elkins seems to omit women altogether was accentuated by his description of slaves whom he identified as part of an American underground, those who never succumbed to Samboism. Among those mentioned were Gabriel, who led the revolt of 1820, Denmark Vesey, leading spirit of the 1822 plot at Charleston, and Nat Turner, an omission conspicuous by its absence, was Harriet Tubman. If Elkins had really been thinking of slaves of both sexes, he would hardly have forgotten this woman, who became widely known as the Moses of her people, end of quote. Patriarchal capitalisms, which only want Amazons to be exotic myths about forgotten ages, have hidden Harriet Tubman in her own fame. They both trivialize and exceptionalize her. These are tools of oppressor culture. The stripped down and censored version of her life is told in elementary schools all over the U.S. empire. So much so that everyone thinks they know her story already, although they don't. Harriet Tubman was born in slavery in Maryland around 1820. She escaped to the North when she was 29, but kept returning secretly to the South again and again to help other slaves escape. For this, she became known as Moses. True statements. But by limiting her, it becomes clever propaganda against her and against her people. Where patriarchy has been unable to deny that women do significant things, it denies the full meaning of what we do by trivializing them. Mary Daly, feminist philosopher, traces the enormity of what patriarchy has done to us. In ancient Greece, the goddess Hecate also known as Artemis and Diana, was sometimes known as Trivia and represented by a three-faced statue. That was also the name used for the intersection of three paths, which in many old cultures were the sites of mystical power. She writes in Gynecology, quote, "In light of the cosmic significance of the term trivia as the crossing of the three roads and of the goddess who bears this name, contemporary meaning of the term in English should be examined. The English term, which according to Merriam-Webster is derived from the Latin trivium or crossroads, is defined as common, ordinary, commonplace, of little worth or importance, insignificant, flimsy, minor, or slight. Of course, according to patriarchal values, that which is commonplace is of little worth. For in a competitive hierarchical society, scarcity is intrinsic to worth. Thus, gold is more important than fresh air, and consequently, we are forced to live in a world in which gold is easier to find than pure air." End quote. So to trivialize Harriet Tubman, the capitalist patriarchy pictures her as an idealized woman by their definition, who makes a life of helping others. Thus, her deeds are squeezed into women's assigned maternal role as nurturer, helper, and rescuer of men, who then go on to do important things. But Harriet wasn't repping Mother Teresa. She wasn't even any kind of civilian at all. She was a combatant, a guerrilla, a warrior carrying pistol and rifle, fighting in her people's long war for freedom, a war that rocked the foundations of African society, American society, and that has never gone away. Think about what it means to be called Moses, which was the code name other new Africans gave her, and which became Harriet's famous warrior name in the anti-slavery underground. When we check out the Bible, we can see that Moses was a ruthless visionary, someone who forced the boldest changes and risks upon his people so that they could survive, who led them out of captivity. To put it simply, Moses was a leader in a time of war. So too was Harriet Tubman. The book Jailbreak Out of History by Butch Lee.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. 34 minutes past the hour. So April 1st is just, 4 or 5 weeks away? And it is an important election day down in Florida. Matt Gaetz's old district is up for, Gaetz canceled himself out of Congress and is up for grabs. And Gay Valimont is on the ballot as a Democrat running for Congress in this special election. Gayforcongress.com. GAY for Congress is .com is the website. Gayforcongress.bluesky.social over on Blue Sky, Gay for Congress on Twitter. And Gay Valimont, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for showing up, and thanks for running for this seat. This is just spectacular. Tell us about the district and about your hopes for this election.
Yeah, our district is made up of active duty military, veterans, and civil servants. We also have a large contingency of farmers and people that are currently losing benefits and their jobs. It's my hope in this super red district that they will vote this time for their interests, because Donald Trump has taken their jobs away. Pardon me. It's President Musk. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I get it. So Gay, tell us about yourself.
Well, I moved to Florida in 2014 from downtown Atlanta. I'm an athletic trainer. I work in sports medicine. My husband and my 3.5-year-old moved to Florida just to escape the city so that our son could ride his bicycle outside. So we settled in Pensacola Beach, Gulf Breeze, and we dug into the community and loved this place. I became a gun violence prevention activist with Moms Demand Action in Florida, and I was the chapter leader. We had 32 local groups throughout Florida, and I spent most of my time in Tallahassee batting down bad gun bills. And then in 2014, as life does and kicks you in the teeth, my perfectly normal 44-year-old husband was diagnosed with ALS.
Oh, my.
And then 6 months after that, my perfectly normal son fell down at school, and 10 hours later, we were life flighted to Miami, where I was told that he had a terminal brain tumor. So I was their primary caregivers until each of them took their last breath. My son's been gone 3 years, and in April, my husband will have been gone 3 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear, Gay. Well,
Thank you.
You seem like a strong and resilient person. Here you are running for Congress. I mean, it's just after that sort of thing, that would knock down most people down pretty badly. I'm sure it knocked you down pretty badly. What are the issues in your district? What are, you mentioned, the Musk taking a chainsaw to government.
Yeah.
Do you think that most of the military, you've got a large military contingent in this district, do you think that they get it?
I think they do. I think that a lot of people are getting it. A lot of our general contractors are complaining that with tariffs, their building materials are going to go up, and now they regret their vote for Trump. We're also seeing our federal workers who go to the bases, turn the lights on, answer the phone. That's what the Musk administration considers to be the deep state. And these people are our neighbors. They go to church with us. They work out at the gym with us. It is going to devastate this area. We have over 20,000 civil servants. Some stories are coming out, but also our state parks, our federal parks. They've all been fired. That was in the last 2 days. And I have two federal parks less than a mile away from where I'm sitting right now. So that is a large group of people who have just lost their jobs.
That's amazing. And who are you running against in this election?
Yeah, well, this is, I ran against Matt Gaetz, who was the national figure, bad boy, completely different election. And now I am running against a guy named Jimmy Patronis, who is the CFO of Florida, who does not live in our district.
What does CFO mean? Chief Financial Officer?
Yeah, Chief Financial Officer of Florida.
For the state, for Ron DeSantis.
He works for Ron DeSantis,
right,
and handpicked for this district because it's super red, and he believes he can come in and steal this seat from these people who were already duped by Matt Gaetz.
Even though he doesn't live in the district?
Even though he doesn't live in the district.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
And he's I'm assuming he's a MAGA guy?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Certainly. And so, his entire platform is, I am here to serve Donald Trump. Wow. Not the people of Florida's first.
Yeah, I get it. We're talking with Gay Valimont, who is running for Congress in one of the 3 special elections this year that may well determine whether Mike Johnson continues to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives and whether the Republicans continue to control that body. Gay Valimont is running in the Florida district that, this is Florida's 1st district. That used to be Matt Gaetz's district. GayForCongress.com is the website, Gay for Congress on Twitter and Blue Sky. So, Gay, how can people support your candidacy? What can people do? I'm assuming going to GayForCongress.com and contributing, throwing a few bucks your way would help out. But there have to be other things people can do?
Certainly. We are pulling out all the stops. We have phone banks on Mondays and Tuesdays. We are calling every Democrat at least twice. We are canvassing. People from other states are coming in with their contingencies. We have to touch every Democrat and talk to independents. I got 50% of the independent vote last time, and 50%, and then 15% of the Republican vote.
Wow, that's great.
If we get that, well, we have moderate Republicans here who see what's happening and understand that government has to come together to solve the problems. And that's what I'm all about. And I hope that people will see through the other candidate and do what's best for this district.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the thing that most people don't realize about, or maybe they do if they think about it, but we tend not to, about special elections is that they're really typically not determined necessarily by the voter turnout of the district, by the voter demographic or composition of the district. They're determined by turnout, because typically they have, in some cases as little as 5 or 10% turnout, usually 15, 20, 25%, whereas a normal election, is 50, 60%. And so if you can do the turnout, if you can get those people out to vote, most people don't even realize that there's an election on April 1st in Florida, or in your district. And so this is critical stuff. If somebody wants to phone bank, if somebody wants to volunteer, how do they hook up with you to do that?
You can go straight to our website,
GayForCongress.com. FOR. Yep.
Yes, and join our team. Or if you are familiar with Mobilize, which most Democrats are, that's where you go to sign up to volunteer. You can go to Mobilize and look up Gay Valimont, and there are plenty of opportunities. And I want to tell your listeners, Pensacola is beautiful this time of year. So please come into district and help us. It's all hands on deck.
Oh, that's great. If you want to have a couple of weeks of sun, fun in the sun and saving democracy at the same time.
Exactly.
Reach out to Gay Valimont at Gay for Congress, GAYFOR, Congress.com on the website, or Gay for Congress on Blue Sky, Twitter, etc. Gay, thanks so much and good luck.
Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate you talking about the special election.
Oh, my pleasure. Keep us up to date, and a couple of weeks down the road, let's get you back on again, okay?
Perfect. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. 43 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with your calls right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news. We'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back, Steve in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Well, first, I just want to say that I'm going to contribute money to Gay for Congress.
Me too.
Sounds like a great candidate. But I called because I've heard a lot of progressives and liberals and Democratic politicians say, and I think they're just trying to sound reasonable, but they say that they're all in favor of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in the U.S. government. They just don't want to do it the way Musk is doing it with the chainsaw. Right. It irritates me every time I hear that, because Republicans have been cutting social services and government services for decades.
Yeah.
There is no waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, there might be, a little bit here and there, but for the most part, they've been cut to the bone. And personally, I think that USAID should be given more money than they already are getting. I think Social Security should be getting more money than they're already getting. I work with Social Security, and I know that they've been very understaffed and underfunded for, again, decades. And people notice it. It takes hours to get through on the phone to Social Security. It takes months and years for disabled people to get benefits. And by the way, kind of changing the subject, but really on the same subject, when they talk about cutting food stamps, SNAP, I should say, there are millions of people who are disabled and unable to work, and they're on on SNAP while they're waiting to get disability benefits. And if we cut SNAP, there's going to be, depending on how much they cut, I guess, but we're talking about millions of people literally starving to death in the streets.
Or experiencing severe malnutrition. I'm with you, Steve. The United States government, our federal government, well, actually, federal and state governments, all government in the United States, represents about 36% of our GDP. In most of Europe, it runs from 47% to 53%, and in the Scandinavian countries, it's typically over 60%. And so you have to ask yourself, are you more free, since freedom is the big meme that Republicans like to throw around, are you more free in a country where you know that you're not going to end up homeless and bankrupt because somebody in the family got sick? Are you more, or not? Are you more free or less free in a country where your child can achieve their potential by going to college without ending up, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? Are you more or less free? If you look at there's a reason why those countries that have federal government participation in the economy that's in some cases 40, 50%, 70% larger than the United States. There's a reason why they regularly rate at the highest level in the international scores of happiness. People want to be free. They want to be free of the fear of homelessness, free of the fear of sickness, free of the fear of ignorance, frankly. And I agree with you, Steve. I think you're absolutely right. This entire meme of, let's get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. It goes back to Reagan, and it's just another one of the Republican big lies. And it's all because billionaires like David Koch back in the day don't want to pay the damn taxes. Steve, thank you so much for the call. Very well said. 47 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with more of your calls in 1 minute. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled American Caesar, Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days. Check it out.
Turn off that channel, it's filling you with lies, spreading fear and anger beneath those polished ties. They twist the truth and bend the facts, it's all a grand disguise. Don't let them rot your mind away, don't buy their alibis. Don't listen to Fox, so-called news. It's misleading, it's wrong, it's designed to confuse. It will watch your brain and make you mean. Turn off the noise and say the truth unseen.
Welcome back indeed. Stephen in Hartford, Kentucky. Hey, Stephen, what's on your mind today?
I'm doing great. I used to travel in Russia, and the people are great. The leader, not so much.
Yeah, that's kind of the history of the last 2 centuries there.
I was just wondering, with Musk stealing our Social Security information, should I start getting mine by mail and change banks, or does that make any difference?
I've read that some people are doing that because their bank is registered with Social Security, but then, of course, if you got direct deposits, you've got to just go back in and re-register, and that things might get lost in the maelstrom, no pun intended.
I'd switch banks.
Yeah, but then you would have to give that new bank information to Social Security if you want to continue to get direct deposit. I was wondering yesterday, I got an alert from LifeLock, that somebody had looked at my credit. It was actually me. And I had to sign a DocuSign document, and you've got to do this, verification of identity. And it pinged me. And I wondered, if Elon Musk, and these systems, there's a bunch of them out there you can subscribe to, that watch your credit reports and things, or tell you when your Social Security number has been found on the dark web. And I was wondering if LifeLock is having to notify people that Elon Musk has given their Social Security information to a bunch of teenage hackers, including some who are associated with apparently with actual criminal hacking groups. And to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no, but wild stuff. So, Stephen, I would not go that far right now, but...
I would also switch to getting it by mail and not let them redo it again.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I see what you're saying. That way they wouldn't have your banking information at all. I think that's probably overkill right now, and I have a feeling that much of this is going to be stopped. The American people are starting to wake the hell up, but, give it another couple of weeks, and maybe my answer will be different. Stephen, thank you for the call. Lamont in Philadelphia. Hey, Lamont, what's up?
Good afternoon to you, Tom.
Hey, Lamont.
And everyone. How are you doing? You always spoke about, you had an audience with the Pope. And are you able to ask an inquiry of him, and it's kept between yourself and him?
Yes, I did. I asked him a question. He gave me an answer, and I've never discussed it with anybody except my wife. Why?
Oh, no, I understand that.
This is Pope John Paul II, by the way.
Okay, my question would have been to him, what's up with the Black Madonna?
Yeah, I didn't think to ask him that. But
for me, that would have been mine.
Well, but John Paul II, as conservative as he was, a big advocate of Catholic outreach in Africa. So I think he would have been all in favor of the Black Madonna, Lamont.
We have to go all the way back to where the church began. What's up with the Black Madonna?
There you go.
Second question. I had a book signing with the former president, Jimmy Carter, and I don't know any nuclear engineers. He's on the submarine. So I went there just to ask a particular question. I think he was a good president, but it's the presidency. What's up with nuclear submarines? Are they able to detect earthquakes? He looked up at me and said, yes, they are. Why do you ask? I said, it's because of the tsunami. And they let all those people die. It's not just the United States. Everyone has to do something.
Interesting conversation. Lamont, thanks for sharing that. Mike in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Well, April 1st is the state Supreme Court race.
In Wisconsin?
And Musk has given, April 1st. We got a controversy here because Elon Musk has given $2 million. It was reported on Madison News last night, WKOW. Brad Schimmel's a Republican versus Susan Crawford, a Democrat. April 1st election, so we got Musk in Wisconsin now buying ads that are kind of like lying, lie ads about this misinformation and that.
Yeah.
And they had Ben Winkler on. They had Ben Winkler on TV last night doing his opinion of it. Mm-hmm. So Musk is in Wisconsin trying to win the race for state supreme judge for Brad Schimmel.
Yeah. So
Wisconsinites, get out there and vote.
Yeah, and double check your voter registration right now, because typically I don't know the dates for Wisconsin. I had them for Florida. The early voting is March 22nd to the 29th, and the deadline to register is March 20th. But whatever it is in Wisconsin.
Musk is trying to buy the election now locally in states now.
Yep, absolutely. Well, he did that, when Joni Ernst in Iowa was waffling about Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary. Musk went into Iowa and bought, I think it was $10 or $20 million worth of some enormous amount of advertising on television, to persuade her, basically, his way of saying, we can take you down. This guy, thinks of himself as a kingmaker or as a king. Mike, thank you for the call. Cliff in Santa Clarita, California. Hey, Cliff, what's up?
Oh, good morning, Tom.
Hey.
I hope.
Yeah. So far, so good.
To any of your listeners that support the occupant of this White House and for some reason aren't aware of his past, just want to address his lack of morals and lack of character. Forgive me for being redundant because you know all this stuff, and mostly everybody listening knows. I want to give them a quick reminder. Based on the Access Hollywood tape, we know where he likes to grab women. He was convicted of sexual assault of Eugene Carroll, including digital rape. He had sex with Stormy Daniels when his wife was 4 or 5 months pregnant. He had a 10-month affair with Karen McDougal, a Playboy playmate. Close to 24 other women have accused him of sexual assault or groping, and I believe every one of them. He was good buddies with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, good enough buddies to fly on his plane several times.
And was visiting his
And
mansion regularly, apparently, in New York City.
Exactly. And one that doesn't get mentioned, Tom, hardly ever, is when he, in 1997, Miss Teen USA pageant, where he knowingly walked into their dressing room to get a little peek.
Not just knowingly, he bragged about it. He bragged about it. I think it was to Howard Stern, as I recall. I could be wrong, but...
Exactly. He's a sexual deviant, a sexual predator. And real quick, the $25 million judgment for Trump University and the most ungodlike guy ever, hawking Bibles for $59 that are made in China for $5.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Cliff. Well said. It's Anything Goes Friday, Anything Goes weekend. I'll be back with your calls for the next couple of hours. I have a few news stories to share with you, but it's just you and me. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism and Other Arguments for Economic Independence by Kristen Godse. And this is from the introduction titled, You Might Be Suffering from Capitalism. The argument of this book can be summed up succinctly. Unregulated capitalism is bad for women. And if we adopt some ideas from socialism, women will have better lives. If done properly, socialism leads to economic independence, better labor conditions, better work-family balance, and yes, even better sex. Finding a way into a better future requires learning from the mistakes of the past, including a thoughtful assessment of the history of 20th century state socialism in Eastern Europe. That's it. If you like the idea of such outcomes, then come along for an exploration of how we might change things. If you're dubious because you don't understand why capitalism as an economic system is uniquely bad for women, and if you doubt that there could ever be anything good about socialism, this short treatise will provide some illumination. If you don't give a whit about women's lives because you're a gynophobic right-wing internet troll, save your money and go back to your parents' basement right now. This isn't the book for you. Of course, some might argue that unregulated capitalism sucks for almost everyone, but I want to focus on how capitalism disproportionately harms women. Competitive labor markets discriminate against those whose reproductive biology makes them primarily responsible for childbearing. Today, this means humans who get pink hats in the hospital and the letter F next to the name on the birth certificate, as if we've already failed by not coming into the world as a boy. Competitive labor markets also devalue those expected to be the primary caregivers of children. Although societal attitudes have evolved in this regard, our idealization of motherhood means that most of us still believe that baby needs papa Mama, a whole lot more than Papa, at least until the child is old enough to play sports. Others will argue that unregulated capitalism is not bad for all women. Yes, for those women lucky enough to sit at the top of the income distribution, the system works pretty well. Although women at the executive level still face gender pay gaps and remain underrepresented in leadership positions, on the whole, things aren't too shabby for the Sheryl Sandbergs of the world. Of course, sexual harassment still hinders progress, even for those at the top, and too many women believe that if you want to run with the big dogs, you may have to suck it up and ignore the groping and unwanted advances. And race plays an important role as well. White women do a lot better in aggregate than do women of color. But when we look at society as a whole, on average, women are comparatively worse off in countries where markets are less encumbered by regulation, taxation, and public enterprises than they are in nations where state revenues support greater levels of redistribution and larger social safety nets. Choose your data source, and you find the same story. Unemployment and poverty plague women with children. Employers discriminate against women without children because they might have them in the future. In the United States in 2013, women over the age of 65 suffered from poverty at much greater rates than men and dominated those in the category of extreme poverty. Globally, women face higher rates of economic deprivation. Women are often the last to be hired and the first to be fired in cyclical downturns. And when they do find employment, bosses pay them less than men. When states need to slash government spending on education, health care, or old age pensions, mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives must pick up the slack, diverting their energy to care for the young, the sick, and the elderly. Capitalism thrives on women's unpaid labor in the home because women's care work supports lower taxes. Lower taxes mean higher profits for those already at the top of the income ladder, mostly men. But capitalism was not always so savage. Throughout much of the 20th century, state socialism presented an existential challenge to the worst excesses of the free market. The threat posed by Marxist ideologies forced Western governments to expand social safety nets to protect workers from the unpredictable but inevitable booms and busts of the capitalist economy. After the Berlin Wall fell, many celebrated the triumph of the West, consigning socialist ideas to the dustbin of history. But for all its faults, state socialism provided an important foil for capitalism. It was in response to a global discourse of social and economic rights, a discourse that appealed not only to the progressive populations of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, but also to many men and women in Europe and Western Europe and North America, that politicians agreed to improve working conditions for wage laborers, as well as to create social programs for children, the poor, the elderly, the sick, and the disabled, mitigating exploitation and the growth of income inequality. Although there were important antecedents in the 1980s, once state socialism collapsed, capitalism shook off the constraints of market regulation and income redistribution. Without the looming threat of a rival superpower, the last 30 years of global neoliberalism witnessed a rapid shriveling of social programs that protect citizens from cyclical instability and financial crises, and reduce the vast inequality of economic outcomes between those at the top and those at the bottom of the income distribution. For much of the 20th century, Western capitalist countries also endeavored to outdo the East European countries in terms of women's rights, fueling progressive social change. For example, the state socialists in the USSR and Eastern Europe were so successful at giving women economic opportunities outside the home that initially, for the 2 decades after the end of World War II, women's wage work was conflated with the evils of communism. The American way of life meant male breadwinners and female homemakers. But slowly, socialist championing of women's emancipation began to chip away at the Leave It to Beaver ideal. The Soviet launch of Sputnik in 1957 spurred American leaders to rethink the costs of maintaining traditional gender roles. They feared the state socialists enjoyed an advantage in technological development, and why women have better sex under socialism.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. Remember when Trump was lying and Vance were both lying about Haitian immigrants down in Springfield, Ohio, eating cats and dogs? Of course, Haitian immigrants are largely black as opposed to, Central and South American immigrants who are mostly brown. Republicans, in their hierarchy of hate, brown people are kind of in the middle, probably with Jews. I'm not sure. Maybe they hate Jews more than black people, but black people tend to get most of the hate that is directed toward people who just have the misfortune or good fortune, depending on your perspective, to be born with a gene that alters the color of their skin, or that makes the color of the skin this or that or the other thing. And so, I think going after Haitians was low-hanging fruit for them, and this is why they, literally lied repeatedly, even though their lies were being called out. Now, this is the sort of thing that, if a Democrat did this, if Joe Biden had told some group in America, he wouldn't have politically survived it. But on the Republican side, lies are just fine as long as they serve the purpose of keeping Republicans in power, or as long as they serve the purpose of hurting the people Republicans hate, and Republicans hate black people. And so Haiti is in arguably one of the worst crises in the world right now, and it's in our hemisphere. And frankly, I think that we bear a lot of responsibility for this, from the Haitian Revolution forward, and Haiti having to pay reparations to France for centuries or for decades, and et cetera, et cetera. I need not revisit the history. I've been there a couple times too, and it's a really rough place. And right now, the country is largely run by gangs and killers. And there's 521,000 Haitians who have fled Haiti and come to the United States looking for asylum. I'm talking legal refugees, people who have come to the United States and applied for refugee status, and it has been granted to them, at least on a temporary basis. It's called Temporary Protected Status, TPS. The Trump administration yesterday announced that they're ending the temporary status, protected status for all 521,000 Haitians. Excuse me, I'm sneezing here. For all 521,000 Haitians as of August 3rd of this year. So 500,000 people who are in the United States right now who know that if they go back to Haiti, or at least for many of them, if they go back to Haiti, they will be killed. They have left behind family, friends, homes, businesses, whatever. They have fled the country. And you don't just do that because, I think I'll take a vacation. They're not going after Norwegian immigrants. Actually, I believe the group with the largest number of illegal immigrants in the United States are citizens of the United Kingdom, Britain and Ireland, and Northern Ireland, and the Irish. There's a lot of whites or illegal immigrants in the United States. I've known one of them for 50 years. He came to MSU to go to school as an exchange student, or as a student from the UK. And he's still here, and he's still illegal. But he's got white skin, so nobody's questioning him. In fact, that British accent people find rather charming. So here it is. They're going to send the Haitians back to Haiti, many to a certain death. These people call themselves Christians, these Republicans. In Matthew 25, Jesus said, one of the things that you have to do if you want to join me in heaven is to welcome the stranger. Yeah. Meanwhile, speaking of Christians, the most persecuted group, the group in Iran, are Iranian Christians. And there is a bunch of Iranian Christians in the United States as well, who also are here looking for refugee status. So here's this story from USA Today, usatoday.com. Sitting on a bed in a hotel room surrounded by 8 other people, including several children. Oh, it starts out, the young woman in the video sounds desperate. Sitting on a bed in a hotel room surrounded by 8 other people, including several children, she explains to the camera that they're all Iranian Christians who journeyed to the U.S.-Mexico border near Tijuana to seek asylum. They were then shackled and flown 6 hours in a military plane to Panama. All our cases are legitimate, she says, her eyes burrowing with worry. I'm a protester in Iran with a record. I can't go back. She will be put to death if she's returned to Iran. And we just refuse to let her entrance into the United States. The beacon of tired, you're hungry, you're poor. Yeah. Christians. And like I said, these Republicans call themselves Christians. Jesus would be, overturning their tables and coming after them with a whip. Hillary Walsh is an immigration attorney in Phoenix who's been working with the Iranians here in the United States looking for asylum. And she said, this is unprecedented. It's not making asylum law hard, it's eliminating asylum law. Asylum is something, by the way, that not only does American law require, but international law requires. This, again, from USA Today, the migrants are told that detention centers there were full and that they would be taken to Texas. This is when they arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border in Tijuana. The migrants were told that the detention centers in Tijuana were full and that they would be taken to Texas, Walsh said. Instead, they were shackled, boarded onto a C-17 military cargo plane, and flown to Panama. They tied our hands and feet, says this young Iranian woman in the video, which as of Wednesday had been shared more than 160,000 times. Women and children, she says, were getting sick and fainting. You could hear cries and horrifying noises from the plane. USA Today notes, or the author of this piece notes, Iranian Christians present a particularly compelling asylum case, according to immigration advocates, because the Iranian government prohibits converting from Islam to any religion. Sharia, or Islamic religious law, as interpreted, considers conversion from Islam apostasy, a crime punishable by death, according to the U.S. State Department. They add the use of military cargo flights is baffling because U.S. officials could transport migrants on commercial charter flights for a fraction of the cost. I think that this has been dealt with, Rachel Maddow dealt with this at some length on her program on MSNBC. The bottom line is that Trump is trying to look tough. He wants to have a show. And, loading people with, well, they put it on social media yesterday or the day before. This whole thing, where they were, to the sound of the chains. These people were shackled and chained as they marched onto a big American Air Force cargo plane. Meanwhile, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers are going back to the scene of the crime, proudly. They made the announcement, Enrique Tarrio, at CPAC. He said, we're going to make an announcement. We got a press conference we're going to hold tomorrow in front of the Capitol. One of the main reasons we came, it's like the FU aspect of it. In other words, the Proud Boys and the Three Percenters or the Oath Keepers are coming back to the Capitol to give the middle finger to the Capitol Police, the Metro DC Police, and Congress. Screw you guys, Trump. Now, their presser says that no members of Congress are expected to join them. I'm wondering why they're not inviting Barry Loudermilk, the guy who gave them tours, the congressman from Georgia who gave them tours of the secure areas within the Capitol building to figure out where best to break in to attack the Capitol, the following day or within that week, just in the days immediately preceding January 6th. And apparently Loudermilk wasn't the only one. Apparently there were several who gave tours to these people. Another thing that has fallen down the memory hole. This is nuts. It's almost 16 minutes past the hour, 15 and a half minutes past the hour. A creepy Missouri Republican wants to set up a registry of women at risk of having an abortion. How does that work? I'll tell you about that right after the break. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Right back with more of the news of the day and your calls on Anything Goes Weekend. Stick around. And welcome back. Kathy in Mobile, Alabama. Hey, Kathy, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your... Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let everybody know that yesterday Free Speech TV was down throughout our show. And apparently, somehow, Comcast had canceled their internet service. Whether
I'm not surprised.
Whether it was something malicious or whether it was just a horrible accident, they're trying to figure it out. But it wasn't a conspiracy to suppress our voice or anything like that. I've gotten emails from people going, "Oh my God, are they trying to take?" Nobody's trying to take us off the air. We're still here. So what's up, Kathy?
Good. I hope you stay on the air.
Thank you. Me too.
Yes, I have a couple of thoughts. First, I'm from deep red Mobile, Alabama, and one of the few liberal Democrats. And but I do have friends who have quite a bit of wealth, millionaires and so forth. But they're not multi-billionaires, neither do they own multi-billion-dollar corporations. Well, needless to say, down here they're quite smug. They're part of what I call the Red Tie Brigade, which I coined back during Reagan's time. But they think that because they're Trump supporters, that they're somehow protected. And the thing I need to pass on to your viewers, and also somehow to the others who think that, is that nobody is safe unless you're Trump or Musk or any of those ilk. You're not safe, and so you can think you're protected and nothing bad will happen to you. Well, you're a peon in their eyes. I don't care how much you think you have, unless you have multi-billions, you're nothing.
Yeah.
And furthermore, second thought briefly, I'm worried about the continuation of Congress, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. Because if you think about it, do dictators even need those around, or are they more of a nuisance than anything? And I think that they may be on the chopping block eventually also.
I think this is one of the reasons why this U.S. Attorney, Ed Martin, has sent threatening letters to Congressman Robert Garcia and to Senator Chuck Schumer for simply saying things. Garcia said, we're in a war, we need to bring actual weapons. And, of course, obviously he was talking metaphorically, political weapons. And Chuck Schumer said, to Supreme Court justices, you sowed the wind, you're going to reap the whirlwind. And Ed Martin is alleging that these are threats against Trump and Musk. And this is after, last year where Trump himself retweeted a picture of a pickup truck with Joe Biden tied up and a bullet hole in his forehead in the back. I mean, an actual threat. But this guy who was a defense attorney for January 6th people and is now a U.S. attorney I believe in D.C., is apparently trying to make a name for himself by intimidating members of Congress. I'm not sure that they're... Well, Schumer actually was apparently intimidated. He went on the floor of the Senate and apologized for his comments.
I couldn't believe he did that.
I know, it's absurd, but Robert Garcia is not backing down. He's publicizing this. He shared the letter. Of course, Ed Martin had published the letter, had given the letter to the press before he even sent it to Robert Garcia, according to Garcia, which just tells you what's really going on here. They're trying to shut up. To your point, Kathy, do dictators need a parliament or a Congress? They need it for the appearance of propriety and legitimacy, but they don't really want it. And so what they do is they try to cow it, and that's what's going on. Kathy, thank you for the call.
Yeah.
Spot on. Good talking to you. I appreciate the call. 20 minutes and a half past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. It's the Great Revenge. Trump's Orwellian America is taking shape. The key to it was this insane executive order titled Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. And basically what it does is it sets up the weaponization of the federal government. It proclaims that the Biden administration was, using the Justice Department to go after Trump people and Republicans, and And it does it in a way that basically rationalizes they're doing the same thing. This is a absolute danger to our republic, this executive order and Trump's assertions around it. And you can read all about it. There's a whole op-ed about it titled "The Great Revenge, Trump's Orwellian America Takes Shape" over at HartmannReport.com. Get ready for the investigations, the arrests, and the show trials. HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
He came down the escalator, smug and loud. Said it drained the swamp, but he fed the crowd. Lies like a flood, truth on the run. Turned the White House into a loaded gun. Fear and fury, that's his play. Set the match, then walks away. Burn it down and claim no blame, while the people pay for his twisted game. It's shock and awe, a wrecking ball. Break the law, deny it all. Tear it down, watch it fall, then beg for a curtain call. He's got the con, he's running the con.
Welcome back, 23 minutes past the hour. So this creepy Republican, Missouri Republican, Phil Amato, has introduced a piece of legislation in the Missouri legislature. Now, the backstory to this is that I believe it was last November, it might have been prior to that, there was a ballot initiative in Missouri that legalized abortion. And it passed by a wide margin. And so just this last weekend, abortion began again in Missouri. Abortion clinics opened back up. They had been paused for a while because the legislature had put into place a law that, a zoning kind of law, licensing requirements and all this kind. And it was just a way of preventing abortion clinics from opening in Missouri. And a state judge said, no, that's illegal. You guys are overstepping your power there, the Republicans in the legislature. So abortion is legal now in Missouri. So this guy has introduced this bill, House Bill 807, the Save Missouri Babies Act. And Phil Amato calls it eHarmony for babies. And here's how it works. If once this law is put into place, if you are a woman and you are pregnant in Missouri, your doctor notifies the state. The state then hooks you individually, you, the pregnant woman, hooks you up with a couple that has registered with the state, an infertile couple who has registered with the state that they are willing to adopt a child. So that couple who wants to adopt the child can essentially harass you, the pregnant woman, into not getting an abortion. The state will give them your personal, private contact information. They'll have your phone number, they'll have your email address, they'll have your address, your physical address. They can come over and knock on your door, whatever. Or at least that's how this bill seems that it's going to play out. This is if the government decides that you are at risk of seeking an abortion. And what the hell does that mean? Nobody knows. It doesn't say in the legislation. So presumably, every pregnant woman in Missouri is at risk of having an abortion because, hey, if you're pregnant, you can get an abortion, at least in the first 6 months or less. By the way, eHarmony for babies is already a thing. There are already a whole bunch of websites and services, mostly run by nonprofit organizations, some run by the Catholic Church, where people who want to adopt can sign up and where pregnant women can sign up and the pregnant woman is hooked up with the people who want to adopt. One of my kids did this to adopt a child. I mean, I've seen it up close and personal. It's a wonderful system. It works really well. But it's based on the pregnant woman saying, I actually want to have this baby and I want to give it away. Rather than the state coming in and saying, hey, lady, you're pregnant. This couple over here wants to talk to you. We gave them your phone number. They're going to come knock on your door. We gave them your address. They can spam your email. This is just crazy. But this, somehow Republicans think that if they can just harass women enough, that women will roll over and do whatever Republicans want. They want to harass them into not voting. Right? Not only do you have to have a birth certificate and a driver's license, but they have to have the same name on them. And if they don't have the same name, this is the SAVE Act, which Congress is going to vote on next week. If they don't have the same name and you don't have a letter from a judge saying that you actually went through a legal process to change your name, if you simply got married and thought, hey, a marriage certificate is enough, you can't vote. And the Republicans will tell you, oh, we love women. Yeah, Donald Trump loves women. We know how that works, right? Don't we?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
27 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls right after the break. Stay with us.
In the Thom Hartmann Book Club today, our book is by Frantz Fanon, and it's The Wretched of the Earth. This is from the chapter on national culture on page 145. It sort of reads like Thomas Paine, actually. Each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it in relative opacity. In the underdeveloped countries, preceding generations have simultaneously resisted the insidious agenda of colonialism and paved the way for the emergence of the current struggles. Now that we are in the heat of combat, we must shed the habit of decrying the efforts of our forefathers or feigning incomprehension at their silence or passiveness. They fought as best they could with the weapons they possessed at the time, and if their struggle did not reverberate throughout the international arena, the reason should be attributed not so much to a lack of heroism, but to a fundamentally different international situation. More than one colonized subject had to say, "We've had enough." More than one tribe had to rebel. More than one peasant revolt had to be quelled. More than one demonstration had to be repressed for us to stand firm, certain of our victory. For those of us who are determined to break the back of colonialism, our historic mission is to authorize every revolt, every desperate act, and every attack aborted or drowned in blood. In this chapter, we'll analyze the fundamental issue of the legitimate claim to a nation. The political party that mobilizes the people, however, is little concerned with this issue of legitimacy. Political parties are concerned solely with daily reality, and it is in the name of this reality, in the name of this immediacy which influences the present and future of men and women, that they make their call to action. The political party may very well speak of the nation in emotional terms, but it is primarily interested in getting the people who are listening to understand that they must join in the struggle if they quite simply want to exist. We now know that in the first phase of the national struggle, colonialism attempts to diffuse nationalist demands by manipulating economic doctrine. At the first sign of a dispute, colonialism feigns comprehension by acknowledging with ostentatious humility that the territory is suffering from serious underdevelopment that requires major social and economic reforms. And it is true that certain spectacular measures, such as the opening of work sites for the unemployed here and there, delay the formation of a national consciousness by a few years. But sooner or later, colonialism realizes it is incapable of achieving a program of socioeconomic reforms that would satisfy the aspirations of the colonized masses. Even when it comes to filling their bellies, colonialism proves to be inherently powerless. The colonial state very quickly discovers that any attempt to disarm the national parties at a purely economic level would be tantamount to practicing in the colonies what it did not want to do in its own territory. And it is no coincidence that today the doctrine of Cartierism is on the rise just about everywhere. Cartier's bitter disillusionment with France's stubborn determination to retain ties with people it will have to feed, whereas so many French citizens are in dire straits, reflects colonialism's inability to transform itself into a nonpartisan aid program. Hence, once again, no need to waste time repeating, better to go hungry with dignity than to eat one's fill in slavery. On the contrary, we must persuade ourselves that colonialism is incapable of procuring for colonized people the material conditions likely to make them forget their quest for dignity. Once colonialism is understood where its social reform tactics would lead it, back come the old reflexes of adding police reinforcements, dispatching troops, and establishing a regime of terror better suited to its interests and its psychology. Within the political parties, or rather parallel to them, we find the cultured class of colonized intellectuals. The recognition of a national culture and its right to exist represent their favorite stomping ground. Whereas the politicians integrate their action in the present, the intellectuals place themselves in the context of history. Faced with the colonized intellectuals' debunking of the colonist theory of a pre-colonial barbarism, colonialism's response is mute. It is especially mute since the ideas put forward by the young colonized intelligentsia are widely accepted by metropolitan specialists. It is in fact now commonly recognized that for several decades, numerous European researchers have widely rehabilitated African, Mexican, and Peruvian civilizations. Some have been surprised by the passion invested by the colonized intellectuals in their defense of a national culture. But those who consider this passion exaggerated are strangely apt to forget that their psyches and their egos are conveniently safeguarded by the French or German culture, whose worth has been proven and which has gone unchallenged. I concede the fact that the actual existence of an Aztec civilization has done little to change the diet of today's Mexican peasant. I concede that whatever proof there is of the once mighty Songhai civilization does not change the fact that the Songhais today are undernourished, illiterate, abandoned to the skies and water, with a blank mind and glazed eyes. But as we have said on several occasions, this passionate quest for a national culture prior to the colonial era can be justified by the colonized intellectuals' shared interest in stepping back and taking a hard look at the Western culture in which they risk becoming ensnared. Fully aware that they're in the process of losing themselves and consequently of being lost to their people, these men work away with raging heart and furious mind to renew contact with their people's oldest inner essence, the furthest removed from colonial times. Let us delve deeper. Perhaps this passion and this rage are nurtured, or at least guided, by the secret hope of discovering beyond the present wretchedness, beyond the self-hatred, something that redeems us.
Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Between 1920 and 1980, America went from the middle class being about 10 or 12% of us up to being over 60% of us. What drove that was high taxation. High tax rates. Woodrow Wilson had 91% income tax rate. Franklin Roosevelt, 90% top income tax rate. Lyndon Johnson dropped it down to 74%. But from that, throughout that entire period of time, with the exception of the Roaring 20s, this is a brief little 10-year period, 12-year period, the top income tax rate was in the neighborhood of 74 to 90%. And what that did was it caused really rich people to leave their money in their businesses and pay their workers well, and that produced the middle class. Reagan came along and dropped that top tax rate down to 25% and then 27%, and it's now in the 30s, and that's what killed the middle class. We need to bring back these high taxes. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com. Will the morbidly rich ever go back to being good citizens? Check it out.
Will Republicans stand up for the land? Or kneel to the strong man with blood on his hands? He's turning our schools to his factory line, where history's twisted and truth is a crime. He bows before tyrants, he dreams of their might. He'll break every treaty, abandon the fight. He purges the soldiers who dare to say no. Will Republicans stand up or just let it go? So tell me now, tell me plain, will you break free or bow in shame? The warning is clear, the hour is nigh. Will you stand up or let it die?
Welcome back, 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Karen in Ventura, California. Hey, Karen, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just want to run something by you. I called two of my senators and my congressman this morning, and just left some comments. And something I've been frustrated for a really long time that you talk about all the time is how the left isn't counteracting the industry that the right has with lying to everybody. And so I've always thought, well, politicians, they can't get involved. But this morning, I just left a message saying, you know, unless something is done to counteract Fox and all the others that they have, nothing's ever going to change because they're winning. And I just wanted to see what you thought about that.
Well, so far they're winning. I mean, you know, and they're doing it with, you know, sneaky stuff. I mean, you know, purging 4.2 million people off the voting rolls is no small thing.
Right. Right. That also, and all the lying, because Fox Channel is the #1 channel. They have the ear of the American people, it seems like, right now. Nothing's being done to counteract that, right?
Yeah, well, several million Americans, yes. We tend to exaggerate the significance of just one particular outlet, but the Republicans have this entire right-wing media infrastructure. You know, where, you know, it starts with a podcast, and then it goes to Fox, and then it goes to all the right-wing radio stations, and then it, you know, and then it goes to the mainstream media. I think your analysis is correct, Karen. As long as they're getting away with it, they'll continue doing it. The question is, how much longer can they get away with it? I think Americans are starting to wake the hell up. I mean, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, in terms of opinion polls, are just falling off the edge of the earth. People are starting to show up at Republican town halls, at Democratic town halls.
Yeah, I think
they're raising hell.
I saw that on Rachel Maddow, I think, the other night. I was just like, oh, yay. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's why I think it's so important. Right now, you know, Democrats can, frankly, in my opinion, could do a lot more than they're doing, but most of that has to do with just yelling. On the other hand, Republicans could actually stop this. And that's why I think probably, you know, historically, generally the people I speak to are the people who have the ear of elected Democrats, you know, who represent them. And in other words, if you call your senator, your member of Congress, and you can demonstrate that you're a constituent, that you live in their district, they will take you much more seriously than if you're out of town. And, you know, I encourage Democrats to get their Democratic representatives to, you know, pass this legislation or introduce this bill or do this thing, right? But right now, we need people who live in Republican districts. I need people, America needs people who live in red states or who live in blue states but are represented by Republicans in Congress to be calling them and saying, why aren't you standing up to this destruction of, you know, 236 years of American democracy? When did we become Russia? You know, why do we have this orange guy who thinks he's king, you know, telling us that, you know, we should all behave like he's Putin? Why do we have, you know, U.S. attorneys threatening members of Congress for speaking out? Why do we have media being sued? You know, what the hell is going on with this country? People in red districts need to be calling their members of Congress and raising absolute hell and demanding that these people hold town halls. So that's... Even
if we're not, because I live in California, if I call some of the Republicans, do you think that would have any effect?
I don't think it would hurt. But, you know, it will not have as much impact as somebody in Iowa calling Chuck Grassley. I mean, you know, you're calling, but, you know, go ahead and call your Democratic members. You absolutely should, 202-224-3121. You know, we need to let them know that we're paying attention. We need to let them know that we want them to stand up. We want them to start behaving like AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Sheldon Whitehouse and you know, Jamie Raskin and, you know, these other members of the House and Senate who actually are exhibiting courage. You know, Robert Garcia.
Right. I was going to call the two senators, and I forgot. I'm glad you reminded me to thank them for not voting for Kash Patel, too.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And call your member of the House and just encourage them to have some spine to stand up. There are still things that we can do. That
was one of the things I'd said today, too, also about that we need you guys to be fierce right now.
Yep,
you know,
absolutely.
The dictator are in the door. They're in the House. We need you guys to be fierce right now. You know?
Well said. Karen, I have to move along, but thank you for the call. Well said. Stephen in Kula, Hawaii. Hey, Stephen, what's up?
Hey, Tom. During the campaign, you wrote a fictional letter from jail to Louise after you'd been incarcerated for your political views as part of the media. Now that Kash Patel is going to be the new FBI director, I heard him say that he's going to go after the media and people in the media who helped Biden promote his so-called lies. So just asking you, how are you feeling?
I'm concerned. You know,
Wow.
I'm fairly low on the food chain, you know, but that doesn't offer me any insulation. I'm concerned, and you know, it's one of the reasons that, you know, we all need to be supporting progressive media. And I'm not talking about sending us money. I'm talking, you know, share the good word. You know, tell your friends how you listen to this program and other programs. I'm not obviously the only one out here. Midas Touch now has the biggest podcast in America. They're, you know, good progressives. You know, in fact, we've been trying to get them on the program here for weeks. There's a lot of good progressive programming out there, and we need to be supporting these folks. We really do. Stephen, thanks for the call. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom. You know, I was just thinking when you opened a program, you've spoken about before about America beginning as an idea. It still is an idea. And there are no words, however great the Constitution is, that can capture that. There has to be a shared sense of morality for it to work.
Yep.
And, you know, I think that some people don't get it. I don't know if morality can be learned. It should be, you know, born into you, that you know what's right and wrong and about suffering and, you know, and all that. And, you know, that bothered me. And I think that one of the major problems is this ability for the president to, let anybody go, you know, with that process where he can get anybody off from jail or something. And that's given them free range, because no matter what they do, Elon Musk could, you know, kill a baby or something, and he could get off. They have no
Well, he is
restraint.
killing babies right now, millions of them in the third world.
Right. And just quickly, I remember Cathars, which were a sect of Catholics that were in France in the 12th century, and they
created the Knights Templar, didn't they?
No. Well, they got along with them, but they had a separate type of Catholicism where they were Gnostic and where homosexuality was okay and everything, and they were also very rich. So the Pope hated them, and he wanted to organize the first the first event where they started killing people, a crusade. And he couldn't get anybody to go. So he said, anybody who joins the crusade can get into heaven. And so all these people joined up, and they went out and they raped and killed and burned people alive because they knew they were going to heaven.
Yep.
And that's what the power of the pardon is sort of like, you know. What happened at the end of this, they also went after the Knights of Templar, and at the end of this, whatever you want to call it, program, the last 13 Knights of Templar were executed on Friday the 13th, and that's where that thing comes from.
Yeah, I've heard it also comes from the Book of Esther, that when Esther had basically saved the Jews by having Haman hanged, because Haman was going to execute Mordecai, that hanging of Haman happened on Friday the 13th, and because that was a great Jewish celebration, the Catholics turned it into a bad day, you know, into a but I don't know. I mean, I just, you know, I'm no scholar of this stuff. I've just, you know, read these things over the years.
Well, one last thing: isn't the military the third rail? If they start violating it, it's in every state. They have military industries
One
in every
hopes,
state.
Bill.
And
One
bases
hopes.
in every state.
I mean, you know, we thought Social Security was the third rail, and he just fired a bunch of Social Security people yesterday. And you know, we'll see. Bill, thanks for the call. As Mike Dirks used to say, the great Zen philosopher. We'll see.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
45 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. And welcome back. Let's see here. Patty in Arroyo Grande, California. Hey, Patty, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Yeah, thanks. I went out to dinner with some MAGA friends of mine last night, and I was telling your caller, I mean, they threw a couple of curveballs at me. The first one was that everybody is going to get $5,000 once they clean all the waste out of the government.
Yeah,
and
Trump threw that out. It's BS.
Yeah, but I asked them because they're like really thrilled about this. Is the $5,000 going to be good enough for you for the rest of your life? Then they came up with this thing that JFK and FDR, did the same thing that Trump did with hiring Elon Musk. And I'm like, no, I lived during those times. I'm 85 years old, and I lived during those times. And I know that what's happening now is Banana Republic stuff of a smash and grab because I once lived in South America.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I'm just kind of flabbergasted because they were so innocent about it. And then I get some kind of Medi-Cal benefit or Medicaid, Medi-Cal here in California to get a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
And so this girl's mother needs a caregiver, because she's 85 too. And then she started asking me how she got those benefits. What is wrong with these people? That's cognitive dissonance. They want to smash all those programs, but then they want to use them.
Right. Yeah. It's an old song, Patsy. it's an old story.
Do you have any insights into this?
They're in a cult. I mean, it's very straightforward. They have joined a cult, and they have and it's a cult that is designed principally to extract money from them. I mean, the Murdoch family are now multi-billionaires as a result of, being the principal drivers of this cult. Rush Limbaugh died, fabulously wealthy, leading the cult. It's a cult. I don't have an explanation beyond that. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty straightforward stuff. Patsy, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Spot on, and keep spread the good word and talking back. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I want to just say a few things about Viktor Orban. We know that he used shock and awe, but last week on Amy Goodman, she had a guest on. She was a professor from Princeton. And this professor, she said that the thing that really made Orban successful when he dismantled that government was the use of speed. He did it so quickly.
Yeah.
And he got the judiciary all tied up in knots, and by the time they got around to figuring out what had hit them, it was too late.
That's correct.
But this particular...
And Orban has been advising Trump and his people.
Exactly. Good point. And this professor, her name is Amy Shalele, something like that. She is a professor of international affairs at Princeton. And so that's where I got that from.
Yeah.
But that's what Trump is doing now.
It's absolutely what Trump is doing, Larry. It absolutely is, because he knows if he does it slowly, we will stop him. So he's got to do it quickly. Larry, thank you for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment, in 60 seconds, actually. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
I was tangled in the headlines, caught up in the noise. The weight of the world had stolen my joys. I grabbed my coat, left my phone behind. Told myself it's time to unwind. The city fades as the highway bends. The air turns clean where the pavement ends. Go find your mountain, your valley, your stream, where the air feels lighter and your soul can dream. When the world feels heavy,
largest park in a city in the world. And I mean, it's like thousands of acres, and it's in this kind of low mountain range. You know, it's like, 2,000-3,000 feet at the most, I think, maybe 2,000 feet. And every weekend, every morning, every Saturday and Sunday morning, Louise and I go out and climb a mountain and to Forest Park. You should look it up if you've never heard of Forest Park. If you come to Portland, you got to visit Forest Park. And it's just amazing, and what a great song. All right, Ann in Trinity, Florida. Hey, Ann, thanks for listening to WMNF. What's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you very much for what you do, and thank you very much to your callers.
Yeah.
They are actually just amazing.
I agree.
I really, one thing I wanted to touch on, I wanted to talk about DEI a little bit, but regarding what the previous caller just said, I'm in Florida, and Andrew Warren was removed by DeSantis. The judge ruled that what DeSantis did had no standing and that he shouldn't have removed Warren. Warren never got his seat back.
Oh, really? Warren was, what seat was that? What position did Warren hold?
Andrew Warren, he was a prosecutor in the Tampa area.
Oh, yeah. He was the prosecutor who said he wouldn't prosecute, quote, illegal immigrants. Was that the deal?
I want to say it was more of abortion. I think there's more of a Planned Parenthood type of stuff that he said. But he, and actually, so DeSantis put someone in his seat, and she actually won election this time for the seat. Yeah. But her actually, the crime has actually gone up in Tampa under her. Anyway, I was calling really regarding the fact that I really feel like we have got to put a nail in the DEI coffin once and for all. And it really should have been easier than I think we've made it. I think that there are vast amounts of people across the U.S. that have had jobs in places where the owner has had his son, which is typically the son, kind of comes in and takes over. The son never worked there. He spent his summers doing whatever. He went off to college and didn't get that, cush job after college. And the easy-paying job was walking into whatever dad had going on. And I think people have had, just been in places of employment where, the person that's doing the hiring hires their buddy that's never worked there, doesn't have any experience.
No, I keep saying DEI stands for Don, Eric, and Ivanka.
Yeah, I mean, we need to take it back to the fact that a lot of people are promoted because they're white males, and it's because of who they know. It's not because they started in the paper, the mailroom.
Yep.
And I think if we kind of bring it back to that mailroom, some of these older generations than myself will maybe kind of catch on to that. I think that we just really need to kind of put that. And I just think that that's an experience that a lot of people have had. My husband said to me one time that one of the best things that from college that he got is the connections that he has been able to make from workplace and just hiring and things like that.
Yeah, it's called the Old Boy Network.
That are out there. Yeah. And so that's just out there. And so I really think, and I think we also need to remind people that women are a minority. People kind of too often want to think of minority and color, and they don't really kind of
the principal beneficiaries of DEI programs have been women, white women, actually.
Yes.
The principal beneficiaries. And that, this is why I wrote that piece, 2 days ago, I think it was Wednesday. Maybe it was Thursday, maybe it was yesterday, that, DEI, the meme that Republicans use when they say DEI, what they mean is replacing competent white people with incompetent black people or incompetent women. When in fact, what DEI does is guarantee that the most competent people are selected for the job, regardless of their race or gender, and that we are opening the door wider to a wider, beyond just white men or just white men and women. And bringing in a larger cohort of potential job applicants. This is it's just pretty straightforward stuff. You could make an argument, I suppose, back in the day that under affirmative action with regard to college admissions, and this is one of the reasons the Supreme Court knocked it down, that less qualified black people were getting into college in place of more qualified white people. DEI is not like that. DEI does not do that. DEI just says, we're going to open the door wider to more people. But Republicans are running as if it was affirmative action, and they're relying on people assuming that it's like affirmative action, which is now illegal. And so and pretty much does not exist anywhere any longer. So, we need to all be saying this as often as possible.
I mean, if anything, DEI helps us to end the guy getting the job just because of who he knew. Exactly. Or what race he is, or what neighborhood he lives in, or yes. Yes, socioeconomic, exactly. And if I could add, I really would like for a lot of our progressive Democrats in the House and Senate to come together and do every afternoon pressers. I mean, a Sanders, a White House, a Raskin, a Crockett, a Ocasio-Cortez together would just be fantastic.
No, it needs to be daily, too. It needs to be daily.
On.
You have to pound the message. Yeah, people don't even know they've heard a message until they've heard it 7 times. It's an old advertising axiom, but it's true. And thank you. Thanks so much. On the other side of the break, can we all be Chris Klewe? I'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
In the Thom Hartmann Book Club today, our book is by Frantz Fanon, and it's The Wretched of the Earth. This is from the chapter on national culture on page 145. It sort of reads like Thomas Paine, actually. Each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it in relative opacity. In the underdeveloped countries, preceding generations have simultaneously resisted the insidious agenda of colonialism and paved the way for the emergence of the current struggles. Now that we are in the heat of combat, we must shed the habit of decrying the efforts of our forefathers or feigning incomprehension at their silence or passiveness. They fought as best they could with the weapons they possessed at the time, and if their struggle did not reverberate throughout the international arena, the reason should be attributed not so much to a lack of heroism, but to a fundamentally different international situation. More than one colonized subject had to say, "We've had enough." More than one tribe had to rebel. More than one peasant revolt had to be quelled. More than one demonstration had to be repressed for us to stand firm, certain of our victory. For those of us who are determined to break the back of colonialism, our historic mission is to authorize every revolt, every desperate act, and every attack aborted or drowned in blood. In this chapter, we'll analyze the fundamental issue of the legitimate claim to a nation. The political party that mobilizes the people, however, is little concerned with this issue of legitimacy. Political parties are concerned solely with daily reality, and it is in the name of this reality, in the name of this immediacy which influences the present and future of men and women, that they make their call to action. The political party may very well speak of the nation in emotional terms, but it is primarily interested in getting the people who are listening to understand that they must join in the struggle if they quite simply want to exist. We now know that in the first phase of the national struggle, colonialism attempts to diffuse nationalist demands by manipulating economic doctrine. At the first sign of a dispute, colonialism feigns comprehension by acknowledging with ostentatious humility that the territory is suffering from serious underdevelopment that requires major social and economic reforms. And it is true that certain spectacular measures, such as the opening of work sites for the unemployed here and there, delay the formation of a national consciousness by a few years. But sooner or later, colonialism realizes it is incapable of achieving a program of socioeconomic reforms that would satisfy the aspirations of the colonized masses. Even when it comes to filling their bellies, colonialism proves to be inherently powerless. The colonial state very quickly discovers that any attempt to disarm the national parties at a purely economic level would be tantamount to practicing in the colonies what it did not want to do in its own territory. And it is no coincidence that today the doctrine of Cartierism is on the rise just about everywhere. Cartier's bitter disillusionment with France's stubborn determination to retain ties with people it will have to feed, whereas so many French citizens are in dire straits, reflects colonialism's inability to transform itself into a nonpartisan aid program. Hence, once again, no need to waste time repeating, better to go hungry with dignity than to eat one's fill in slavery. On the contrary, we must persuade ourselves that colonialism is incapable of procuring for colonized people the material conditions likely to make them forget their quest for dignity. Once colonialism is understood where its social reform tactics would lead it, back come the old reflexes of adding police reinforcements, dispatching troops, and establishing a regime of terror better suited to its interests and its psychology. Within the political parties, or rather parallel to them, we find the cultured class of colonized intellectuals. The recognition of a national culture and its right to exist represent their favorite stomping ground. Whereas the politicians integrate their action in the present, the intellectuals place themselves in the context of history. Faced with the colonized intellectuals' debunking of the colonist theory of a pre-colonial barbarism, colonialism's response is mute. It is especially mute since the ideas put forward by the young colonized intelligentsia are widely accepted by metropolitan specialists. It is in fact now commonly recognized that for several decades, numerous European researchers have widely rehabilitated African, Mexican, and Peruvian civilizations. Some have been surprised by the passion invested by the colonized intellectuals in their defense of a national culture. But those who consider this passion exaggerated are strangely apt to forget that their psyches and their egos are conveniently safeguarded by the French or German culture, whose worth has been proven and which has gone unchallenged. I concede the fact that the actual existence of an Aztec civilization has done little to change the diet of today's Mexican peasant. I concede that whatever proof there is of the once mighty Songhai civilization does not change the fact that the Songhais today are undernourished, illiterate, abandoned to the skies and water, with a blank mind and glazed eyes. But as we have said on several occasions, this passionate quest for a national culture prior to the colonial era can be justified by the colonized intellectuals' shared interest in stepping back and taking a hard look at the Western culture in which they risk becoming ensnared. Fully aware that they're in the process of losing themselves and consequently of being lost to their people, these men work away with raging heart and furious mind to renew contact with their people's oldest inner essence, the furthest removed from colonial times. Let us delve deeper. Perhaps this passion and this rage are nurtured, or at least guided, by the secret hope of discovering, beyond the pleasant wretchedness, beyond the self-hatred, something that redeems us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of the program. Is this Chris Klewe or Chris Klewe? I'm not. I believe it's Klewe. I'm not a sports fan. He's a former NFL punter. He stood up for gay marriage over a decade ago. It cost him his career. And Jim Stewartson writing about this. He writes, "Be like Chris Klewe or Klewe. He says last week his local city council in Huntington Beach wanted him to put up a plaque celebrating the library with the words magical, alluring, galvanizing, adventurous, with each letter of each word capitalized, M-A. And so Chris stood up and said, and I quote, "Unfortunately, it's clear that this council does not listen, so instead I'm going to take my time to say what MAGA has stood for these past 3 weeks. MAGA has stood for trying to erase trans people from existence. MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. MAGA stands for censorship and book ban. MAGA stands for firing air traffic controllers while planes are crashing. MAGA stands for firing the people overseeing our nuclear arsenal. MAGA stands for firing military veterans and those serving them at the VA, including canceling research on veteran suicide. MAGA stands for cutting funds to education, including for disabled children. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democratic, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat, but that's what it is. And I will now engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience." And at that point, he sat down and they had to carry him out. There you go. God bless you, Chris. Also, geeky science here for the day, and then I'll pick up your calls. This was a study that was just published by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Maybe one of the last ones they publish if Elon Musk and Donald Trump's slashing of this agency and of course Bob Kennedy's slashing of this agency holds. This was based on 2 household case studies from Michigan in May of last year. And they were published this week in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report of the CDC. And what they found basically was that there were a couple of house cats that died of bird flu. And in one case, the father of the household, the guy, one of the people who lived in the household, worked with chickens, and the chickens had bird flu, and he came home, and the cat was sleeping on his clothes that he had worn when he was working with the birds. And this cat got bird flu and died. The other cat appears to have gotten bird flu from a flock in the backyard, from birds in the backyard. So this stuff, this bird flu, is apparently quite lethal to cats. And so if you have cats, and we have several cats, ranging from a very old one, a 19-year-old cat, to a brand new one, a kitten who is just going bonkers. I mean, just flying around the house like a rocket ship. If you have cats, be very careful. I mean, we live near the Columbia River, and so we've got a lot of geese and ducks and things, and they tend to come up to the house, particularly if you feed them, and poop all over. And so we've stopped feeding them. We've stopped leaving anything out that they might like or want, because we're concerned that we might track their poop in, basically, and bring with it particles of bird flu. And, we don't want our cats to die. This doesn't seem to be affecting dogs, interestingly. But cats appear to be very vulnerable to bird flu. So just FYI and heads up, time to start being really careful. And don't let your cats outdoors. I mean, you should never let your cats outdoors because they kill birds. But killing birds used to be just, a terrible thing to the environment because you're killing birds. Now, killing birds means your cat may well end up with bird flu and be dead. So if you let your cat out, stop doing that. It's not a good thing to do. All right, all that said, what's on your mind today? It's Anything Goes Friday. Jessica in Chicago. Hey, Jessica, what's up?
Tom, thank you for both of those stories.
You're welcome.
I love the show all the time. And just like Trump's bringing everyone in this country to their knees, begging for their livelihood, let's give it right back to Trump. And on March 15th, the Ides of March protests at the White House. And people in Florida can protest by his golf course or by Mar-a-Lago and make great posters. And Tom, the best protest poster I've seen was from the recent protest in Washington. It was a work of art. It was painted of I don't know how it was done, but it was Trump. It looked like it was painted. He had the white stuff under his eyes. It was such a colorful poster. He looked like a stooge. He had a yellow blazer, a striped rainbow tie. It was incredible. And the poster said, "He is not a king, he is a clown."
Uh-huh.
So I'm asking, Ziggy, we need some protest T-shirts. And
he may already have you been to his website, endbribes.com, Jessica? He's got a lot of good stuff over there.
Tons. There's a photo of that poster, and it was from New Jersey. My cousin sent me the picture. Mm-hmm. It's in the Star Ledger, and incredible work of art. But I was going to have on a T-shirt, "Trump's just a cruel clown." And then he does not deserve the nobility of a king anymore. He posted the photo of himself with a crown. Yeah. It should have been a Burger King crown. So, another T-shirt idea.
Yeah.
Trump's
the Burger King.
Yeah. The only crown you'll wear.
Well, and his wife was dressed like the Hamburglar. I guess that's a McDonald's meme, but yeah.
Yeah, it would be great. Those two together.
The Burger King and the Hamburglar.
Yeah.
Side by side.
And Trump's cruelest, on my shirt I wanted to say, Trump's cruelest regime wants to kill us all. And on the back he's a tyrant clown. Yeah. And so I'm hoping there are so many protesters out that they scared the clown to the bunker.
Yeah.
And I also agree with one of your callers, Joe. There should be a federal strike across the country, and maybe on Friday, March 14th, the day before the big protest.
Yeah.
And I guess they're protesting. It is online. Thank you for all your websites to go to. In front of the White House, in front of the Capitol, in front of the Supreme Court, we flood the zone with everyone.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I'm grateful.
And you can get all the information about those at indivisible.org and 5050.1, FIFTY.ONE.
It's a march, and that's coming up. And then I know there will be protests in May 1st and May 5th. They're shutting down restaurants around here to protest for the immigrants. They're losing so much business in the Mexican restaurants that people are afraid to go.
Yeah, I get it. There's a relatively new Mexican restaurant near us in Vancouver, Washington, just across the river. That's just wonderful. It's this marvelous young couple who have just started this restaurant. Clearly, English is not their first language, and several of the people who work there don't, speak hardly any English. I am hopeful that they are here with permission, because I would hate to see them, get arrested or kicked out. But it's got to be a tough time. To be Hispanic
we
in
always,
this country.
My husband and I always patronize the Mexican restaurants around here.
A friend of mine in New York, her husband is Hispanic, and he's carrying his passport everywhere he goes now, particularly now that Eric Adams has surrendered his dignity to Donald Trump. Jessica, thanks for the call. It's just about 15 minutes past the hour. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Speaking the truth, the multinational corporations Trump and Musk would really rather you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Kevin in Oxford, Michigan. Hey, Kevin, what's on your mind today?
Can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
Okay, thank you. First thing, I want to ask you a question and make a quick thing about Democratic banding, what we should do. The first thing is the congressional budget hearings. If the Democrats all got together or even found a few Republicans, or maybe even through filibuster, block all funding to Elon Musk companies, to stop his $200 million that he gets, or whatever, $8 million a day.
Oh, it's billions. He's getting billions from the federal government. I believe it's $18 billion, but it's particularly through Starlink. I mean, NASA's shoveling money at this guy.
Right, and he just went in and fired a bunch of NASA people yesterday or something.
Right, and I think that was to improve the power of Starlink and SpaceX. Excuse me, I meant SpaceX, not Starlink. Although I believe he's getting.
But I'm wondering if Congress can go through like a filibuster or get a few Republicans that are on the sane side still to like stop this.
Well, the caveat is get a few Republicans. So far, we don't have any. I mean, Tom Tillis last night in the United States Senate stood up and said, Volodymyr Zelensky is not a dictator. Putin is a dictator. And I was like, whoa, it's some pushback. But how long this is going to last and how far it's going to go, I don't know. I have a feeling, though, that Trump's days of power, his days of being able to get things done quickly and snooker the American people are fading quickly. But we'll see. We'll see.
Right, but I would like to get rid of that Elon Musk and they can send him back to South Africa, and then they can explain to the American people about the money he gets and the money that people's lives depend on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Kevin, thank you. That's a great call. Marshall in Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, Marshall, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Last time I talked to you, I shared a part of a list of rich pejoratives with you. You asked me to email them to you, and I don't know if you got it.
I did.
But I did publish it on a Substack, Integrative Activism 2026, and I've got some other things there that might interest you or your audience.
Okay.
Such as a little bit about talking people or questioning people out of the cult of MAGA. I've also got some creative protest thoughts and ideas, Project 2026. So I got to say that
share a few of them right here, right now.
End until we manage to amend. Pardon?
Yeah, I said share a few of them right now. I'll give you a minute or a half a minute anyway.
Well, for one thing, we probably should spend a little time doing some preemptive protest petitions to the military, because we're all worried that Trump's going to try and use the military against us. So, we might want to do some protests around military bases and ask them to honor their oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all
sounds like a good
enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yeah, definitely, Marshall.
Yeah, law enforcement, courts. So, a lot of stuff there. Integrative Activism 2026. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Marshall. 19 minutes past the hour. I'll be back in 60 seconds with more of your calls. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
Do you have that fire in the belly? The courage to stand, to speak your mind, to lend a hand, voting, shouting, making your way. Standing up for democracy every single day.
Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, regarding DEI, that is the Republicans' new N-word. I know they use it against everybody they hate.
Yep.
But that's what they're using.
Yeah,
it
it was
for,
CRT last year. This year it's DEI.
Yeah. And I'm watching the Bloomberg, and the Dow is down by 731 points as I speak.
Whoa.
Donald Trump got on their program, and when he started talking, that's when they just kind of took a big dive.
Oh, really?
And so he's it's still hanging at 731 points down below.
What did he say that crashed the stock market?
Oh, whenever he gets on my TV, because he lies so much, I grab my remote and I mute it so I won't hear any more of his lies.
You know, I do that too, but I also put on the subtitles so that I can read it if I choose to, because his voice
I don't even want to read
on
his
my
words.
nerves.
Yeah. No, I think it's toxic to your soul, actually, so I don't listen to him anymore.
I agree.
And so the Dow is down. His poll numbers are down since he became president.
Yep. And he started underwater.
Gold is at an all-time high. That's an indication that the economy is in dire straits.
Yeah, the people are freaked.
Yep. And his Treasury head, and I don't have his name right now, but his Treasury head keeps getting on Bloomberg and lying and claiming that Joe Biden spit us into inflation when Joe Biden actually cut the deficit. And, in fact, the Fed also cut the quantitative easing that they were doing under Donald Trump. So we actually knocked off about $5 trillion per year when Biden was president. So he did not cause the inflation. That was actually Donald Trump and Powell.
I agree.
And also Powell has now announced that he's going to reduce the amount of quantitative tightening.
Oh, geez. So Powell's going to give a gift to Trump now.
Yeah, now he's gonna because the markets are not doing so well right now. So he's going to. I'm of the opinion he's going to quickly move to quantitative easing again.
Of course,
probably before June.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Because if he doesn't do that, the Republicans are going to have to explain why it is that inflation is rising again and jobs are falling off the cliff, and everything that Donald Trump has done in the past when he was president the first time. It's all coming back to us again.
Yeah.
And they're going to be running for a second term in 2 years. And so, I'm eating my popcorn. I'm watching this clown show. It's still going on. And it's not bothering me at all. It's bothering me what he's doing to Ukraine, but it's not bothering me at all as far as our country is concerned, because I think they are going down. Yeah. And it's because they're overreaching.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Larry, thank you for the call. It's always great to hear from you. I appreciate the information. Jeremiah in Alexandria, Virginia. Hey, Jeremiah, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Just was listening to you talking about the bird flu, especially in relation to house cats. And just to add a little bit of, detail to it. My wife actually works in veterinary medicine. She's a nurse / tech for over 30 years. The mortality rates that they're seeing across the board right now in cats when they get it, 80%.
Wow.
So it's bad. And ferrets, because we have a pet ferret as well, 100%.
Wow.
So be very, very cautious. Yeah, I mean, we're both longtime advocates of keep your cats inside. Yeah. I've stopped feeding my wild birds, all of that stuff. So we're taking as much, precaution as we can right now, but just be extra careful because if you don't want to lose any of your feline pets and ferrets, and like you said, it's not really affecting, like dogs can get it, it's just not deadly.
Yeah.
But of course, if a dog gets it, they can give it to the cat.
That's right.
Potentially.
Or you.
So yeah, just be very careful.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, there's very, very little transmission to humans so far, but the concern, of course, is that the bird flu and one of the random strains of normal flu will coexist and most likely pigs. That's where it usually seems to happen, and then we will end up with some gene jumping in a flu virus that has the capacity to easily infect human tissues and has the lethality of this bird flu for humans. We've had
absolutely
several.
There has been some animal to human transmission so far.
Right.
You know, it's limited, but it hasn't made the genetic jump.
Right. So far it's all been cattle that are eating chicken feathers. Weirdly, they feed milk cows chicken feathers because it's a source of protein, and the chicken feathers are contaminated with bird flu, and then it gets into the raw milk, and you've still got Bob Kennedy and these idiots out here pushing raw milk. It's a great way to get the bird flu. And now apparently there's some people who are concerned that some eggs may have bird flu in the yolks. I don't know if you've encountered that. But
in the yolks? No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, Louise and I have stopped eating eggs.
The feces is a big problem, you know.
Not that we ever ate that many eggs.
Feces is a big, I mean, the feces is the big thing, especially with the wild birds and the flyover and all that. So, it could get ugly.
I agree. Jeremiah, thanks for the information. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good talking to you. 27 minutes past the hour. It's Anything Goes Weekend, picking up your calls. I'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of this break, so stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with your calls.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery by Mark Charles and Soon Chan Ra. This is from chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. In this land, to the mental illness and race hatred, in quotes, of a single young white man. He may have acted alone, but he was not alone in his thinking, encouragement, gathering of arms, warped consciousness, confirmation, or ahistorical views, and yeses from the millions in the nation who proudly wear and display the Confederate flag above their hearts and fly it in all of its traitorous glory over a state capitol and other institutions. Again, we find ourselves at war with history and culture, entertaining another call for a national conversation on race and a president weary of trying to make sense of and comfort the grief-stricken nation with words from the highest office of the land. This was written while Obama was president. These are the facts, not an opinion or the ignorant ranting of compromised preachers and television pundits. A 21-year-old white man, a citizen of South Carolina, walked into the sacred and spiritual home of the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church of Charleston, the historic home of black liberation fighter Denmark Vesey, and fatally killed 9 of its members, including the pastor, during Bible study. This was a pure act of domestic terrorism. A modern-day lynching by a young white nationalist who coolly and calmly assassinated 9 black members of Mother Emanuel. Domestic violence and acts of terrorism are on the rise in the United States, as detailed by Charles Kurzman and Daniel Schanzer in their New York Times op-ed, The Other Threat, where they state that, quote, the main terrorist threat in the United States is not from violent Muslim extremists, but from right-wing extremists, end quote. In their national research, local police agencies across the country identified, quote, the militias, neo-Nazis, and sovereign citizens as the major threat the nation faces in regard to extremism, end quote. All of this is homegrown with international connections. Morris Dees and J. Richard Cohen of the Southern Poverty Law Center also writes in the New York Times article, Racists Without Borders, that, quote, Americans tend to view attacks like the mass murder in Charleston as isolated hate crimes, the work of a deranged racist or a group of zealots lashing out in anger unconnected to a broader movement. This view we can no longer afford to indulge. When, according to survivors, Mr. Roof told the victims at the prayer meeting that black people were, quote, taking over the country, he was expressing sentiments that unite white nationalists from the United States and Canada to Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Unlike those of the civil rights era, whose main goal was to maintain Jim Crow in the American South, today's white supremacists don't see borders. They see a white tribe under attack by people of color across the globe. The end of white rule in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and South Africa, they believe, foreshadowed an apocalyptic future for all white people, a white genocide that must be stopped before it's too late. End of quote. The internationalization of terrorism is not a foreign theory in today's social media world. Dees and Cohen will be speaking at a conference in Budapest about this transnational white supremacism that is emerging as the world grows more connected technologically. The message of white genocide is spreading. Also, David J. Whitaker's Terrorism, Understanding the Global Threat, gives another view. Clearly, our rush to forgive this mass murderer within 96 hours of this supreme tragedy is misguided, anti-human, and does not allow for properly grieving the fallen. As perfectly scripted, displaying the permanent effectiveness of Christian acculturation on the Sunday, June 21st, 2015 morning services at Mother Emanuel Church, the black Christians out-Christianed their white brothers and sisters. Before the presiding elder, Reverend Norvell Goff Sr., found it necessary to thank the local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies for doing their job. He also stated, quote, "A lot of folks expected us to do something strange and break out in a riot. Well, they just don't know us. We are people of faith," end quote. I find this statement inappropriate, insensitive, and ahistorical, implying, whether he meant it or not, that the recent uprising and rebellions in Ferguson, New York, Cleveland, and other parts of the nation were riots and did not include black people of faith, and that somehow they were strange in their social, political, and economic activism. Informed people do not riot against injustice or white terrorism. They study, organize, and strategically struggle at all levels, in the streets, on the campus, in front of the White House, and in corporate boardrooms. Dylan Roof stated his stated intentions were to start a race war, and informed black leadership understands that we cannot pray this away or appeal to any law enforcement agency that all across the country, including Charleston, has been seriously compromised. To label black reaction to murder, terrorism, deep unemployment, substandard housing, etc. is as riot to blame the victim. The book, Taking Bullets.
Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it.
I remember when you stood tall, proud, and free, waving the banner of democracy. Eisenhower warned of power unchecked. Goldwater said corruption must be kept in check. But now I see you bow your heads to a liar wrapped in gold and red. He breaks the laws, he spits on truth, and still you march behind his boots. Will you salute the tyrant, kneel down low, or stand for the country you used to know? History's watching, the world can see. Will you fight for the republic, or let it cease to be? Once you swore no man should rule unchecked. Now you let him burn the nation wreck by wreck. Reagan spoke of freedom's fight. Now you shun the press and dim the light.
Welcome back, 35 minutes past the hour. So what's on your mind today? It's Anything Goes weekend here. Dee in Washington, D.C. Hey, Dee, what's up?
Hi, Mr. Tom. Thank you for your show. By the way, my rescue kitty's on her soft blanket watching birds on her laptop. So thank God for that.
Yes, birds on the laptop are safe.
Yes. I moved from the Deep South to the Northeast for jobs. And I found the Northeast as racist as the South, except in the South, they were more genteel. They kept their distance. In the North, I've heard the N-word more than I care to. They said, oh, the only reason you got your good job is because you're black. Slavery's over. You guys need to just get over it. Like, you know, so blacks think that the Northeast is this Mecca. It's not.
Yeah, I've lived in both places.
Flavor, so.
Yeah, I lived in Atlanta.
What is that?
I lived in Atlanta. I've lived in Vermont, New Hampshire. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, with your analysis.
And this was an hour out of New York.
Yeah, yeah.
So I left that area just recently, came to the D.C. metro area to get away from some of these aggressions. It's a
pretty diverse and tolerant area generally.
Yeah, absolutely. But now this robber baron, this con man, breaking into our systems, taking our privacy data and just shutting off life-saving programs and funding. When that happened, I was pretty much done with America. So I wanted to get your feedback. Does it make sense for black people to take our tax money and go to more democratic countries? Because, you know, the vein of racism and prejudice is so deep, are so deep in this country. Is it time to move on? And I know it's not going to be perfect in other countries, but perhaps they're more democratic and more socialist in some cultural norms.
Yeah. Well, most of the democratic countries, certainly the European, you know, the democratic European countries are struggling right now with their own racism. I mean, the rise of the right, Meloni in Italy, I forget his name, in Finland, the new right-wing guy in Sweden. You've got AfD in Germany, the National Front in France. The principal thing that they're all raving about is dark-skinned people coming into their country, mostly from Syria, or Turkey. So you're not going to escape racism in any of these, you know, white-dominated countries, Dee. Costa Rica might be a reasonable place, although there's a lot of anti-black racism among Hispanics, too. I mean, I noticed that when I was working in Colombia. You know, the entire power structure of the country is all mostly white, you know, heirs of conquistadors, you know. And so I don't think that it's possible to, frankly, to escape racism anywhere in the world. Certainly, in Australia is maybe even worse than most. You know, I've worked with the indigenous people, with the Aboriginal people in Australia, up on the Lockhart River, and they're heavily discriminated against. But that said, I mean, you know, if America is turning into a fascist state, fleeing the country not just to escape racism, but to escape fascism, is not an irrational thing to do. I can tell you from my own personal experience, back in the 80s, 86, 87, Louise and I and our 3 kids lived in Germany. And by the end of that year, and we had thought when we moved over there that we might stay for a decade. I mean, you know, I was working with an international relief agency. I loved the work. I loved the people that, you know, we had a whole community of people there in Steinach, in this little town in Germany that we worked with. And but by the end of the year, we were so homesick for America, even with all her faults and warts and problems and everything else, that we moved back. So I would caution you, but I wouldn't discourage you.
So the gutting of Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, you know, what are the workarounds for that? Because actually also, you know, we're paying Social Security for people like my mom who worked 40 years.
Yeah. Well, I think
the other piece, the financial piece.
You know, again, if you go to any of these other countries and you don't have considerable personal wealth, you're going to have a really tough time getting permission to live there. They're very you know, opposed to people coming to these countries, even countries that are fairly liberal in their immigration policies, like Portugal. You know, you really have to have, you know, at least a couple $100,000 or $500,000, you know, in the bank when you come. But I think the solution is to get politically active here. I think this country is worth fighting for. And I think this country has a hell of a lot of promise. I mean, every generation until most recently, we have seen improvements, not just in the quality of life and standards of living in the United States, but we've seen improvements in racial relationships, in gender relationships. I was just the James Bond franchise just got sold to Amazon. And that reminded me that Louise and I, back a year or so ago, on a long weekend, watched a couple of old James Bond movies. And James Bond was basically raping women in the 60s. I mean, it was like, America had this rape culture that was very real. We've been watching a TV series, Chicago PD, and we started at the beginning, which was like 15 years ago. And they were all the time just beating the crap out of people and breaking the law. And the guy who's the hero of the show, the sergeant, he's just like this maniac who ignores the law. And then came the George Floyd time, and suddenly there's more black people on the show, and suddenly they're not beating people up anymore. And it caused me to realize that I'm seeing that right across the board. I'd seen the same thing with the Hawaii Five-0 show that we had watched. I confess we enjoy cop shows. It's good, dumb, stupid watching. And the new Hawaii Five-0, they would beat people up, shoot people in the knee as they're interrogating them, stuff like that. They stopped doing that after the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think we're continuing to improve. We just have this anomalous moment where we've got this complete ass, running our country, with his weird South African friend who's tearing the government apart. So I'm not ready to give up, Dee, and I don't recommend that. But those are all my thoughts on it. I need to move along to another caller, but Dee, I wish you well and good luck, and let us know what you come up with, okay?
Appreciate you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dee. Good talking to you. Mark in Los Angeles. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Long-time listener.
Thank you.
I just saw some breaking news over the past 3 or 4 hours, and it says that Alner Musayev, a 71-year-old former Soviet intelligence officer, has alleged that Trump was recruited by the KGB in 1987 and given the code name Krasnov. Thought that was fascinating.
That is not a news story. I mean, the code name is a news story, but Craig Unger wrote a book, Compromat, as I recall, back almost a decade ago, that laid out, he had this informant, Iri Shevitz, who was also a KGB officer. And Shevitz said that, Trump's first wife, Ivana, her father was a KGB informant. And he hooked it up for Trump to come over to Russia in 86, 87, as I recall. And Trump was seduced by the KGB, and he's been on Russia's side ever since.
Wow.
Yeah. So
awesome. Well, thank you for your show.
Wild stuff. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Good to hear from you. Tucker in Berwyn, Pennsylvania.
Hi, hey, Tom. I haven't called in months, but I've been listening.
Thank you.
So,
what's on your mind?
But first, quick for Ziggy. You can spell Fox News Fokkkkx News.
Okay.
And Siri still pronounces it the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, why I will never get off my liberal soapbox. Despite my dining room being littered with picket signs, and I go to rallies and town hall meetings and everything, I'm on Facebook all the time.
Good on you, Tucker.
Preaching. I share your stuff and all your Substack friends, and I write my own stuff. And one of my Trumper friends, who's actually a really nice guy, took exception to the term willfully ignorant and said, I'm only preaching to the choir. I need to stop doing it. And I thought about that. And the other day, I got a phone call from a friend from high school 40 years ago I haven't spoken to, thanking me for all the posts I put up and informing her.
Sweet. She had caught you on Facebook, I guess.
Yes, we're friends on Facebook. We've been friends for years on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she just wanted to thank me and ask me not to stop. And she's never registered to vote before, and she's going to register to vote and vote.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
So I'm telling everybody, keep yelling, keep preaching. Someone's listening. You might change one person's mind at a time, but you have to keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tucker, good on you. And thank you for the call, and thanks for sharing your inspiration with everybody else. I appreciate it. It's 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. We'll be back with your calls in just a minute.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Drudge is reporting that on May 9th, Donald Trump is going to go over to Moscow and officially kiss Putin's ass. That's good. It could be. Welcome back. Bradley in Northport, Michigan. Hey, Bradley, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Well, I certainly enjoy watching and listening and learning from everyone else at the same time, Tom. Sort of following up from a couple other people, the press conference thing should be done in an organized way inside, get people in there like a regular press conference, and don't conduct it outside in a shrill area like that. Get it professionally done, get like Pete Buttigieg or someone that just wants to start establishing a national identity, to start building a little bit of name recognition, and somebody we would like to support going forward.
I agree, and they should do it with an audience.
Yes, I agree. And so I've gotten a hold of Hakeem Jeffries, at least left the voicemail. I've emailed my senators, both Democrats, and trying to prompt them to organize or get started getting that kind of a thing together, because as we know, every day it's just that fire hose of what Bannon said. You can't only keep up with so much. Yeah. And that's it. But the second thing, Tom, is, and I'll get off, is I know people have been kicking around different thoughts about how to go about a little bit of a protest here, but I've come up with a forward motto that I've used for a couple of years myself, because I could see when my friends didn't come along with logic and they couldn't explain themselves, I thought they didn't suddenly get dumber, they got sold something. So anyway, I came to the establishment that it is obviously a cult, and it's a simple four-word phrase, all capitalized: cults never end well.
Yeah, let's not say that word out loud.
The ominous tone. It sets that ominous tone that we need to be forewarned and not be caught, second guessing. So get out ahead of it, organize, because that's what it's going to come down to. No cult ever ends well.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to get ready for that, gird ourselves for that, and establish ourselves that way. So please, going forward, reinforce that.
Yeah. Just ask, is it Jackie Rosen? I think that's the name of the woman who was shot with the congressman down at Jonestown back in the day.
Yes. Yes. And you can go chronicle history, and it's just, they never end well.
Yeah.
And so we got to get
well said, Bradley. Well said. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. Alfredo in Mountain View, California. Hey, Alfredo, what's up?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah. No need to ask that, by the way. I used to hang up on people when they asked me that. I've stopped, but no need to ask.
You're welcome to do that.
No, I won't.
Sorry, Tom.
That's okay.
No. Yeah, regarding the bird flu.
Spear, by the way, not Jackie Rosen, who was shot at. Back to you, Alfredo.
Yeah. I wanted to remind all your listeners that 95% of all the eggs produced in the United States come from factory farms in which these birds, egg-laying hens, are raised in horrible conditions, where they are in cages where they cannot even turn around. And people should really think twice about how these animals are raised and not to contribute to this cruelty.
Yeah.
There are plenty, of course there are alternatives, plant-based alternatives to eggs. One of them is just eggs. You can do a web search on it.
Yeah, Louise uses those to cook with. You're absolutely right. And there are even some that you can make scrambled eggs out of that look and taste like scrambled eggs. And we've been using that stuff for a long, long time. Occasionally, Louise would use eggs to like make a cake or something, but we've even stopped that. I'm with you, Alfredo. I got to run, but thanks for the call and thanks for pointing that out. We'll be right back. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out.
I walked in the door, they said, watch what you say. But I knew the truth don't matter anyway.
First thing I did, tore the watchdogs down. Said the deep state was out to take my crown. CIA, FBI, I called them a joke. Truth's just a fire, and I love the smoke.
Welcome back. 10 minutes, 9 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Chris in Oakland, California. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks for picking me up. Hey, just to reiterate some really great points that Larry and Bradley made. The orange stain is spending political capital that he does not have. He's already a month in. He's upside down on his poll numbers. And once again, as was the case with COVID, he is again hurting his supporters by making measles great again.
Down in Texas. Now there's 2 states that have measles.
Yeah, so the message is this: organize, organize, organize. MAGA is a lie.
Yeah. Well said, Chris.
You have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Marty in Worth, Illinois. Hey, Marty, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to talk about Marco Rubio for a second and just wonder why he would agree to sit down with Trump and Putin to discuss Ukraine. Like, he knows nothing.
Isn't that pathetic?
I thought that.
I mean, he stood up to Putin before, and I mean, his parents are refugees from Cuba, for God's sake. He knows about Russia.
That's my whole point. Like, he knows better. Like, I know he knows better. Yep. So why would he even like? What is his
power
end game? Like,
and wealth? This power and wealth. That's what he's going to get out of this, and he knows it. And it's pathetic. It's pathetic. The guy has sold his soul to the Antichrist.
It's mind-boggling because I thought, like, of all the GOPs, like, I thought he might have been like the more level. I don't know why he would even agree to sit down in a forum like that. It just nothing. He knows nothing's going to come of it. It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. It's just going to make him look bad in the end, I believe. But.
Well, every single one of these people who have taken a job in the Trump administration are going to learn the lesson that the people in the first Trump administration learned over and over and over again, and that is that your first job when you are in Trump's orbit is to kiss Trump's butt, is to flatter him, is to tell him how wonderful he is, and to do whatever he says without question. And I mean, that, like I said, that is how dictators operate. That's what Donald Trump aspires to be. That's what he's trying. I don't think he's going to succeed. I hope he doesn't succeed, because if he does, it's the end of the American experiment. But these guys have no courage. They've got no spine. J.D. Vance going over to Europe and giving a speech that I know he knows was full of lies. These guys are pathetic. They're absolute cowards. Marty, thanks for the call. Bill in Princeton, Minnesota. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, happy Friday.
Back at you, Bill.
Okay, I'm sitting in a real Christian area, and during the last election, there was ads out in the local rags, and there was the little signboards in front of the places of business and people's house that, a vote for the Democrats is a vote for the devil, and blah, blah. It was just really nuts. Well, I'm in Michelle Bachmann's old district.
Oh, yeah.
So,
okay, I get it.
So what I did is I started taking out little ads in the local rags, and it was just simple. Jesus was woke. Matthew 25.
I love it.
The GOP, not. And then I put war on woke is war on Jesus Christ. And then I put CINO in bold letters. And below that, Christian in name only. Wow. And I put pray.
Wow.
We got to get the CINO thing,
Yeah,
you get the
yeah.
line,
and you can buy these ads for $25 a day or something like that, can't you, Bill? In your local newspaper?
Not. I'm just these little rags around here.
Oh.
But, I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Christian in name only. I'm an atheist. I have more Christian values.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. That's brilliant,
you got to
Bill.
start throwing this Christian value stuff for what it is.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely brilliant, Bill. Tip of the hat. The call of the day. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Everybody, get going on this. Let's put this on billboards and
There you go. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Bill, I want to get one more call in here before the end of the week, but thank you. Jim in St. Louis, Missouri. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing? I'd like to make a statement. I think your listeners and viewers remember when Donald Trump ran against Secretary Clinton back in 2014, and huge rallies. And down in the South, in rural areas, he had huge rallies, huge turnouts. 35, 40, 50,000 people went to his rallies. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump promised these people that he was going to bring manufacturing companies back to rural areas and urban areas, and the product's going to be, say, made in the USA. Donald Trump had 4 years as president of the United States to bring jobs back. He didn't bring a single job back to this country that I know of. Yep. No manufacturing company
No,
whatsoever.
in fact, he negotiated a deal with Mexico that gave new tax breaks to companies to move their manufacturing to Mexico. Jim, I got to run, but thank you. Spot on. Hey, special thanks to Louise Hartmann, Sean Taylor, Nate Hadwell, Jamie Holly, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, Patrick Hoyt, Geraldine Halbert, Ron Hartenbaum, Chase Spross, Nicholas Miller, Pat Sweeney, Jay LeBlanc, Al Gorilla Jeremy Peterson, Connor Arroyo, Carna Verity, Martha Salinas, Mateo Robertson, Diane Rubin Michaels, and Mark Thoman used to work here. All the great people who helped put this program together. And thanks to you for sharing the good word about our program and other good progressive media out there. Pass it along. Tag you're it. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll catch up with you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Agriculture Commission.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!